All right, what's going on? Drive time, kind of Tuesday afternoon style. It's about 1:56, so 4 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock when we typically sign on to do afternoon drive. But it is a historic day up on the Hill as the torch will officially be passed from Kyle Whittingham to Morgan Scalley. The press conference introducing Morgan will begin momentarily. So we have Sean O'Connell and Porter Larson up on the Hill getting ready to bring us the sound. James Peterson getting me on air today. And it'll be very, very interesting to see how this entire thing goes down as Morgan will be officially introduced via a press conference. We'll see who's on the dais. We'll see ultimately who addresses the media, who addresses the community, and we will bring that to you live in its entirety as soon as we are ready to go. Happy Tuesday to you. It's about 48 degrees and sunny as our mild winter and the benches continue. But good news for the ski bros. The mountains got smoked overnight. A lot of snow up in the mountains. So I hope you're off to a good work week after a long layoff probably. And we've got a lot to do on this Tuesday show. So we'll open things up with the Morgan Scalley press conference set to come your way in just a couple of minutes, and then we'll react to it after it's over. We're going to stay a little fluid with the clock as a result of the presser, but we will be joined by Stevenson Sylvester. We'll be joined by Terrell Burgess. We'll do a little NBA today with Tim McMahon, talk some Utah Jazz. The trade deadline is virtually 1 month away from today. Jazz lost to the Blazers last night. They're going to take on Oklahoma City coming up on Wednesday. So we'll do a little NBA today with Tim McMahon. But the majority of the show will be the Morgan Scalley press conference and then getting some former players on to react. Brett Ciancia from Pick Six Previews will stop by. We'll do a comprehensive both review and preview of the transfer portal that is open. And a lot of news surrounding the University of Utah today, a little BYU Cougar news as well. Luke Wells has been added as the tight ends coach for the Utes by Morgan Scalley. Luke is Matt's brother and very familiar with the offense run by Kevin McGibbon, the new offensive coordinator for the Utes, taking over for Jason Beck, who, of course, now lives in Ann Arbor. Jordan Gross officially added as the offensive line coach, former Ute that's been coaching some high school ball. And some transfer portal additions. Ethan Day, North Texas defensive end, announced on his Instagram that he has committed to the University of Utah, as has Marcus Wimberly, a safety from Oklahoma. Braylon Conley, a cornerback from USC, was in town to visit. Nothing official there. So we will bring all the transfer portal news to you on the show today as it spills in. News that Smith Snowden is going to make the rounds a little bit and interview in places such as Michigan because, of course, Colorado and the like. So when you look at the Marcus Wimberly kid, looks like he's going to take the place of Te'o Johnson, who hit the transfer portal for the Utes. So Utah, BYU, really not stung too bad with the transfer portal stuff as of now. We'll see if things change. McKay Hillstead, of course, has transferred from BYU. He was never going to get snaps anyway. And McKay might be back, headed to his former school, which, of course, is Utah State. Words that he's heading back up there. We do have some information via the New York Times about what a college football budget is like right now as far as what you have to spend to make sure you fill out your roster. And if you do a little math based on who we think is coming back, this whole thing with the $20.5 million allocated to all student athletes, the idea is about $16 million allocated towards the football team. Just looks like it's going to be difficult to really cultivate depth anywhere, whether it's Utah, whether it's Alabama, whether it's Ole Miss. So we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the finances that the New York Times reported today and try to bring it around from a Utah standpoint. Of course, it is a big week ahead in the world of college football and a big weekend ahead in the world of pro football. A lot of conversation about the calendar and whether or not it makes any sort of sense at all for college football to be continuing its CFP tournament when most of us have already turned our attention to the world of the NFL playoffs. So don't forget, we are, we are your home of the college football playoffs. You can hear all the games on our station. Starting on Thursday, we'll say goodnight for this show a little bit early to make way for Miami and Ole Miss. And on Friday, the two Vegas favorites to win the championship, Oregon and Indiana. Both those games are on ESPN, and both those games will begin at 5:30. In the world of the NFL, the wild card round gets going this weekend. It's hard to believe that the regular season is behind us. But on Saturday, a couple of games, couple of wild card games, Rams and the Panthers. Then it's the Packers and the Bears. And on Sunday, You've got 3 good games: Bills, Jags, Niners, Eagles, Chargers, and the Patriots. Then on Monday night, your pro football weekend will culminate with the Texans and the Steelers from Pittsburgh. Of course, the Steelers beating the Ravens in that unbelievable Sunday night game. So a lot of football on the show today, as you would expect. A couple of more weeks, quite frankly, of big-time football coverage. Then we'll probably move a lot of our coverage over to the world of pro basketball when it comes to the Jazz, the trade deadline, landscape of the NBA, and obviously college hoops as well, as both Utah and BYU have made their foray into Big 12 play. And early indicators, whether it's Ken Pom or simply the AP Top 25, Big 12 is the best conference in college basketball this year. I think it was the SEC a year ago, but I think it's easy to ascertain that this year it is the Big 12. So a lot of challenges ahead for Alex Jensen. Of course, Kevin Young has that thing ticking down in Provo with BYU as a top 10 team. Utah started their Big 12 play with a little bit of a butt whooping by Arizona, the number 1 team in the country. They'll be back in action against KU. So we'll get to all of this, but let's head up to the Hill. A historic announcement. Morgan Scalley introduced as the head coach of Utah football.
We're going to start the program here with a video, and then we'll bring out the guests of honor. So sit back and enjoy. This is a great afternoon for the University of Utah, and let's go Utes.
Morgan Scalley.
Morgan Scalley.
Morgan Scalley.
Morgan Scalley, head coach in waiting, and his track record awfully impressive across multiple fronts as a recruiter and a play caller.
Yeah, Morgan Scalley's a great player, but you know he's a coach. He's competitive maniac. He understands the game. He was a coach on the field. Incredible leadership. He elevated those around him. Utah's in great position for years to come.
My job is continue to maintain and strengthen the culture that we have. I truly believe that culture does matter, and we're going to get the right guys in this program.
He's been revered as one of the best defensive coordinators in America for a lot of years. Grew up just a couple miles from Rice-Eccles Stadium here. He is everything that the Utes are all about.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here today. At the University of Utah, we strive for excellence in everything we do, and University of Utah athletics is no different. So many opportunities are given to young men and young women to strive and succeed on the field, and it's that energy that we all watch that brings us together as a community. Utah football is woven into the fabric of our community as well. And we are thrilled that today one of our own, Morgan Scalley, has stepped up and is going to be our new head football coach. Morgan shares our values, he shares our history, and even more importantly, he's got the brains and know-how to succeed in this new era of college athletics, and I am confident that we have the right man for the job at the right time. So thank you very much for taking this assignment, Morgan. Liz, we want to welcome you as well. We know that this is a family affair, and we know that you and your kids will be an incredible support to him and his biggest supporters on and off the field. So we want to welcome Liz and the family today as well. I would be remiss if I also didn't mention Morgan's predecessor, Coach Kyle Whittingham. Kyle's impact on this university was broader than just victories on the field. It also impacted us as a community. And he set a high standard, a standard that we know Morgan will exceed. And we appreciate Kyle Whittingham's legacy, and he will forever be a Ute. Finally, I want to extend my sincere gratitude to Mark Harlan, our Director of Athletics, for not only overseeing this transition in football, but also being an innovator in this very tumultuous time of college athletics. We are very, very fortunate to have Mark leading the transformation of not only all of our sports, but also the business model and what we are as an organization in athletics. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here today.
Well, this is one of those rare and special days where we get to witness somebody's dream coming true. Today we welcome and formally introduce Morgan Scalley as the 24th head coach in the history of University of Utah football. There's no one better prepared or better suited to take the reins of Utah football. He's a Utah man through and through. I have had the great fortune of being the voice of the Utes for 17 years. And every single one of those years has included working with Morgan Scalley, whether it was as safeties coach or defensive coordinator and now head coach. So now, let's welcome to the stage the man who will introduce formally Utah's new head football coach. In his 7th year here at Utah, he's guided the Utes to new heights in the classroom and in competition. 32 conference championships, we'll add to that. 48 NCAA tournament berths in 10 different sports. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Director of Athletics, Mark Harlan.
5 ski championships, I do believe, Mr. Eccles. You're welcome. Thank you. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this historic and very exciting day for the University of Utah, as we officially welcome Morgan as our new head football coach. Your presence here reflects the great admiration and appreciation we all have for Morgan. I'm sincerely grateful for all of our student athletes, some of whom are here. If you could raise your hand. Thank you guys for being here. Second day. No one's missing class right now. Our coaches that are here, our staff, our faculty, our donors, and alumni and fans, you guys are what make this place so special and allow us to succeed. We can succeed at the highest level in all our sports because of you. I also want to specifically thank Jeff Rudy. Jeff, are you here? Probably hiding in the wings as normal. Jeff Rudy is our amazing football overseer of football. You can imagine he's been very busy, even right now looking at his phone because he hates when I call him out. Thank you, Jeff Rudy. Anybody with 2 first names is dangerous. It's the same with Rudy. Of course, without the tremendous leadership of President Randall, none of this success is possible. Thank you, President, for everything you do, and our late night phone calls trying to figure it all out, I'm very grateful for. I also want to recognize Spence, who's here today, and remind you and your family, you are the foundation. You laid all of this out for us. Your leadership, your passion, your investment is why we're all here. We're very, very grateful. Thank you. And Chairwoman Eccles is here as well. And she's been incredible as we've gone through this transition, and your passion for athletics and this university is I'm very grateful. Thank you. I too want to recognize Kyle Whittingham for all that he has done for the University of Utah, for this athletics department, certainly the football program, the university, and I would argue the state of Utah. He established a legacy here that will stand the test of time, and we really do want to wish Kyle and Jamie and the entire family the success on their next adventure. I too, Liz, want to welcome you and your family. Thank you. And the one thing I would say in advance, thank you for sharing him with us, because obviously we're very appreciative, but can't wait to spend time with you and your family. Andrew seems to know everything about roster developments before his dad does. So I've learned to just reach out to you if I can't get something from you. Thank you guys so much. So moving forward, when we talk about a Utah man and the attributes, it's hard to imagine somebody as uniquely equipped and suited for this role as Morgan Scalley. He has proven over and over again that he is not only prepared and ready to lead, but will excel in taking over our storied football program. Let me tell you this, nobody prepares like Morgan Scalley. He loves the University of Utah, and the bond runs deep throughout his family for generation. Can I have the Scallies raise their hand real quick? Appreciate all of you.
Raise them high.
Forgive me for singling anyone out, but Bud, who played here, who was better, you or Morgan? Bud. And Bud, you didn't say anything, but I heard it. Sorry, Morgan. I love it. But like I said, he loves this university, and you can see why. The generations that have attended this University of football head coach is more than a job. It is personal for Morgan. I'm not going to take the time to share with you all of the success as a student athlete and a coach, and certainly as a player, because many of you could recite that with Morgan. But I'm going to tell you this. I've had the opportunity over my 8 years here to witness the way Morgan leads young men and mentors them. He handles success and adversity at an elite level. He is always prepared, organized, and leads with confidence. His composure, his clarity, and certainly we saw some of those results last Wednesday night in Las Vegas, didn't we? Today officially begins a new chapter in Utah football, and he is ready. As an organization, so too we are ready. This department and this university will continue to provide the resources needed to attract and retain the best talent and the best coaches. I can assure you of that. We will compete for championships in the classroom, in the community, and certainly in competition. We will build this brand consistent with the aspirations of this incredible institution under the leadership of President Randall. So today, we gather to celebrate one of our own. So with no further delay, I'd like to introduce to you, and President Randall, if you could join me, the 24th head coach of the University of Football program, Mr. Morgan Scalley.
Two things I want to clear up. I'm really not that smart. They talk about my brains. I'm not that smart. I've got a bigger heart than I do a brain. I'm just grateful for people that have surrounded me that make me look smart. And my best recruiting job is sitting right here. I'm a baby. You're going to see that today. I'm a baby. But man, our team's going to rip your face off. Okay? And the second thing that was said is, no one prepares better than I do. I do not have a prepared speech, so congratulations. So I'll be off the cuff. I am grateful to my Savior, Jesus Christ, not ashamed to say that, who sacrificed for me, has led me in this direction. Didn't know that I really wanted to get into coaching, and so I've led my life based on a belief that He will lead me, He will guide me, and based on the Spirit, it has brought me to this place where I can give and serve and love. So grateful for this opportunity. My name is Ford Morgan Scally. Some of you don't know my first name's Ford. Ford is my father's name, my grandfather's name. And I always wanted to play here because of my dad. Grew up, he played for Ray Nagel. You know, I was born in the Wayne Howard years. And Chuck Stobart after that, who I didn't really know I was too young, but once Fossil hit the ground, that's when I was coming to games, and I was running the tunnels, and I had my Little League jersey on so I could get in for free, okay? And I'm one of you. All of you that are sitting in here that went through the same thing, I'm a fan. I'm a Ute. Have been, forever will be. And when that time comes and I'm done, okay, someone else will step up. I understand that, okay? It's not about me. It's not about one person. It never will be, okay? It is about these guys. It is about the players, okay? And players win championships. Teams win championships, not individuals. So while my name is going to be out there and this is history and I get it and I love it, it's all about the guys that I grew up watching, okay? And my dad is number one in getting me here. Bud, I love you. My middle name is Morgan. That is my mom's maiden name. Claudia Jean Morgan. And her father, Nick Morgan, was a huge Ute supporter. He has the bleacher quarterbacks that he started. I guess it was forerunner for the Crimson Club. And my grandfather, Nick, passed away before I could even meet him. And so one of these days I will meet him. And he's watching right now. So, Grandpa, I love you. Mom, thank you. Thank you for letting me do this. She didn't want me to play football. She, I don't know. I don't think you can do it. You know? Yeah, you were wrong. But you want to know where I get my crazy side? And you player, Jono, the singing, the dancing, all that crazy crap I do, that's Claudia, okay? That's Claudia. And the combination of my family, you know, all Utes, so grateful for you and being there for me. And the ones that sacrifice the most right now that don't get to see Dad as much as they would like. Emma Jean, okay? Maddie, Andrew, love you guys. We're going to make this special. You got me? Okay, thank you for letting me do this. Okay, so grateful. Just had a family full of people that have helped me along the way and just forgiven me for all the crap I do, you know. And so this is my history. I'm a Ute, and I was recruited by a guy by the name of Ron McBride. I never thought I was going to get an offer to the University of Utah. Don Eck was the O-line coach at the time, and he came to Highland High School and, just kept talking to Coach McBride. I like this kid. What there was to like, I don't know. But I waited and waited and waited, and Utah was the only place I ever wanted to go. And I didn't care about any other scholarship offers. I didn't get many. And then Ron brought me up to the facility, which was a shell of itself back then, but brought me up to the facility, sat me down, offered me a scholarship, and I'm sure wanted to say, you think about it, and I didn't allow him to say another word. I said, I'm in. I'm in. Yeah. And just have had an unbelievable group of coaches that have led me along my way from high school on up. Tom Kingsford, Larry Gelwicks, Larry Wilson. I've had some really good coaches. That some are here today, and I love you. And Ron took a chance on me, and, you know, every time I'm going through something or he can tell, you know, Utah had a bad defensive game, you know, this guy reaches out to me. And one of the best recruiters, the best recruiter I've ever known, okay? Love you and grateful for you. Ron recruited me as a wide receiver. I was a running back in high school, wanted to be a running back, wanted to follow up my dad. And that wasn't a good thing, okay? Because there was a lot of depth at running back at the University of Utah at the time. They switched me to wide receiver, and I didn't learn how to catch the ball with my hands. I was a body catcher. I went to the first spring workout, off-season workout. Ryan Breska was a quarterback. And I started catching footballs from Ryan Breska, who, if you knew Ryan Breska, he threw every ball like it was a fade, a 5-yard hitch, as hard as you could throw it. And he was awesome. He's a baseball player. I came away from that practice so tattooed, bruised, and I came home and my mom's like, what did they do to you? So I had to learn to be a wide receiver, and I don't know that I ended up learning to be a good one. And there was a coach there, Bill Bush, who saw something in me as well. And grateful for Bill Bush for having a vision. You guys that we've asked to change positions, okay? Jackson Benny, okay? We do it a lot here at the University of Utah. I didn't want to change, okay? Bill Bush said, you'll be an all-conference safety, and I laughed at him. Said, there's no way. And I sat down with Kyle Whittingham, and he shared the vision as well. And Kyle said, Morgan, we want you to play safety. We think you could be an unbelievable one. I said, Kyle, it's always been my dream to play running back here, to follow up my dad. He said, Morgan, it's always been my dream to play center field for the Angels, but that's not going to happen. Fair enough. I wish I had made the change sooner, because I loved the safety position. Kyle Whittingham, Bill Bush allowed that to happen, made that happen, and Kyle Whittingham has given me chance after chance after chance for my entire career. I love Kyle Whittingham. And I know he's going to be successful wherever he goes. I know he's at Michigan. He's going to be amazing. I'm grateful for the chances he's taken on me, for mentoring me, tutoring me, breathing life into me when I didn't necessarily love football. And I was asked to change positions. So I've had great coaches that have helped me understand the beauty of this game. I don't believe at the end of my life God is going to ask me, Morgan, why didn't you score more touchdowns? You know. Why didn't you win more games? He will ask me, how did you serve? How did you give? Did you love? Did you honor your wife and your family? Did you take care of them? Right? And so in the grand scheme of things, this game is very insignificant, but at the end of the day, it is a very significant school in what it has taught me about life and what it takes to be successful in life. There are many titles that you men will hold, and I know you know this by heart, don't you, Rabbit? Okay? And the number one title you will hold will never have anything to do with football. That title is father. And the goal here is to create great ones. We will teach them skill sets and mindsets in this game. And if the only skill sets we teach are how to become a better football player, we are failing them. Because at some point, no one cares about your 40 time. No one cares about how high you can jump. That skill set runs out. There are so many more things that we teach you guys, right, about what it takes to be successful in life that go beyond the game, the transferable. That's why I coach. Yes, I'm competitive. Yes, I want to win every game by 50. Yes, we're going to teach, and we're going to scheme, and we're going to be the most innovative and on the edge, on the cutting edge of being the best, okay? But we want you to become great men, great fathers. Don't we, Nate? My man. I've been through a ton of transition here at the University of Utah. When we went from the Mountain West Conference, okay, and we were playing, and I remember playing in front of, I think, 15,000 fans. Would have been my sophomore year, UNLV. And all of a sudden, in comes Urban Meyer, another guy that I love and respect and infuses, passion and energy. And that stadium, when we played Cal in 2003, when the fire chief was like, "What are you doing? This is not right. It's illegal." Urban was like, "I don't care." And kind of, it was amazing. I still, to this day, in that game, you had Alex Smith versus Aaron Rodgers. Okay? And the running back for Cal fumbled in that game. I picked it up, and Aaron Rodgers tackled me. That's my claim to fame. I have been tackled by a future Hall of Famer. The fact that he's still playing now, I don't get it. I don't get how he does it. But watching him try and escape outside the other day, I was like, okay, yeah, you can't do it. Bless his heart. He can throw, though, can he? And all of a sudden, the passion and energy for football. And you saw that, we go to the Fiesta Bowl, and all of a sudden, Kyle takes over, and, he does his thing. He puts his own stamp on the program. The Sugar Bowl, that was my first year as a full-time coach in 2008. We went undefeated. I'm like, this is easy. Man, being a coach. And grateful for Derek Odom, our new safeties coach. Had Derek not left the program, I would not be here, because I took over for the safety spot. And my wife was like, "You've got your business degree, okay, figure it out." And so anyway, great. Thank you, Derek, for leaving. That's why I'm bringing you back, my man. You're a stud. And then the transition into the Pac-12, and it just has gotten better and better and better. And the goal now is playing in January and getting the national championship. And I'm not ashamed to say that. We can do it here at the University of Utah. We're going to do it here at the University of Utah. I've always believed that. Don't know that I wanted to be a coach, but again, the more I saw the beauty of what is taught in this game, the more I wanted to become a coach. And I love to teach. These guys know this. Sometimes I talk too much, which is what you're getting right now. But I hope that everyone understands what it's going to take to get there. It's going to take all of us, okay, and then some. Grateful for young men that buy in, that want to be a part of a legacy, right? That want to do this and do it the right way. We are going to be smash mouth. We're going to score, and we're going to play great defense. And I can't wait to get this thing going. I've already done a press conference, by the way. I don't know. This is like number 2. I feel like Costanza, we went 1-0. I was like, should I just go out like on top? George Costanza, that whole thing. But anyway, to the donors, to the boosters, the people that have believed in me, Spence Checketts, man, thank you for your belief in me. The Board of Regents, thank you for your belief in me. And I'm going to pour everything I have into this program and make you proud. Okay? To President Randall, to Mark Harlan, to Jeff Rudy, you guys that have been side by side, helped me along this transition. Let's go do this. Let's go do it. Thank you so much. Go Utes.
All right, we're going to have some questions for Morgan and for Mark. For the media that's here, we're going to have a pass mic that will be sent around, so just raise your hand. I'm going to kick things off. We'll start with a question for Mark. You know, Morgan's been head coach in waiting now for a little while. When you gave him that label, Mark, what did you see in him? What was it that, you know, you've hired coaches throughout your career, but what did you see in Morgan that said, yeah, this is the right guy to run our program?
I think you just saw it. I think you just saw it right there. I think what I noticed quickly when I went to practice in the fall, because I got here in June, and I saw his passion working with the players. I studied up on him, certainly had a lot of conversations with Kyle about his staff, and then I just observed. You know, it's so funny about Morgan, and we'll see if this changes now that you got the head coaching deal going on, but watch him on the sideline. Like, he's so cool, calm, collected. Sharif, you know, is going around, running around. There's Sharif over there. What's up, buddy? He's running around doing his thing, but you're so cool, calm, and collected, but you can see the fire burning. But I think most important is just the way he treats and cares so passionately and authentically about the student athletes. It's really something I have not seen in my 28 years now in the business. He truly, a lot of coaches talk about loving their players. This man loves his players, and I think that's what we need in this game today more than ever.
Man, thank you. If you hear a recording from the headset, I'm not calm, cool, and collected. Anyway.
All right, Morgan, a quick one for you as well. You've coached for a long time. You've certainly had opportunities at different junctures in your career to expand, go elsewhere with the opportunity to maybe come back. But what was it that kept you here with other opportunities that presented themselves throughout your career?
I never wanted to leave here. I didn't. My family is here, and I don't want to ever uproot that. As long as I felt valued, as long as I felt like I was giving something, and that's why, you know, people leave organizations, programs. Number one reason ain't money. It's because they don't feel valued, they don't feel loved or appreciated, and I've always felt that. Have there been opportunities? Yeah. Do you listen to those opportunities? Yeah. But then you tell those opportunities, thank you, but no thank you. And I've been grateful to be here my entire career.
All right, assembled media, raise your hand. We'll have the pass mics come around, and I think Josh will probably lead us off over here. Say your name when you raise your hand.
Yeah, Josh Furlong, KSL.com. Morgan, as you look to the future, what do you want your legacy to be remembered as?
What do I want my legacy to be remembered as? I don't think that I think in those terms. I just, you know, one day at a time, and give everything I have, and at the end of the day, you know, it's good enough or it's not good enough. And the results will speak for themselves. Abraham Lincoln said, I do the best I can, the best I know how, and I mean to keep doing so until the end. If the end brings me out all right, what is said against me will amount to nothing. And so that's pour everything into it.
Morgan, Steve Bartle, KSL Sports. We know your defensive culture, RSNB. That's what you've preached. But now you get to coach the offensive side of the ball. What do you see when you think of your offense? What do you want that to look like?
Well, I want, number one is physicality. You win championships with offensive and defensive line, period, end of story. Particularly in a game that's changing and where you're not practicing as physical because the numbers are shrinking. You'll always have to be physical. So establishing the offensive and defensive line. I also believe that you have to be innovative. You have to be creative. When Kyle came to me last year and said, I want you to look at the coordinators that we're interviewing, you know, we looked at about 6-7 different coordinators, and I came to Jason Beck's offense and saw the formations in the boundary, the shifts, the motions, the stuff that causes defensive coaches, you know, ulcers. And you know, how are we gonna match that? How are we gonna do this? Okay, and so the same process with Kevin, you know, and you take a look at that film and you're like, my gosh, okay, yeah, it makes you smile. At least makes me smile, right? And then everyone else will understand the why. But so excited. You have to be physical, and then you have to be innovative. You have to always be on the cutting edge, always be a student, never think you have the answers. So anyway, hopefully that answers that.
Hey Morgan, Joe Colson, Deseret News. You touched on it there, but why was Kevin McGivern the choice for offensive coordinator?
The reasons I just talked about, the innovation, and if you watch and study the film, And at least if you know football, right, you'll see the issues that his offense can present. You look at the track record, and throughout the years, I've made it a priority to always follow those whose offenses, because as a football coach, we watch football, right? That's my profession. And I like to see, I go on the road, I study football and what can give me problems, what's innovative. And so you keep names throughout your journey. Well, being a head coach in waiting, there's a lot of people that will reach out to you because they think any year's the next year. And every year, his name comes up. Scally, you got to look at this guy. Scally, you got to look at this guy. I know, I've looked at him. I know about him, right? And so he creates issues at levels in football. And I can get into the X's and O's, but then you'd be sitting there like, okay, he's speaking Mandarin Chinese right now. But he's really good at what he does. He's efficient at what he does, and he's done it at a level that hasn't necessarily had the resources that we have. So get ready for Kevin McGivern.
Morgan, John Kuhn, Associated Press. You had to assemble your staff on the fly with kind of a tight window with the transfer portal opening. With that in mind, when you were hiring assistants, how much of it was looking at the immediate needs here and now versus what you needed long-term as the team as well?
Well, I think it's kind of a combination of both. The things that you have to do, particularly because, I never knew when I was going to become the head coach. So you always have names in mind. I mentioned this with Kevin, right? So you go through and you just keep names in positions that you respect, priority being to, great teachers. In this game where 30 to 40% of your roster, you're going to see change every year. You want great teachers so that when those kids come in, they get them to learn. They get it to go. Also an offense like Kevin's, like Jason's, where your wide receivers, your skill players are being cued, meaning they're being told on the sideline what their job responsibility is as they line up. There has to be a system where you can teach these young men quickly, right? And get an offensive identity established early. That allows for that. It didn't hurt that we already had the skill players for that system, that had been in that system, right? Devin Dampier, Bird Ficklin, Wayshawn Parker, Daniel Bray, J.J. Buchanan, all these guys, Larry Simmons, all these guys that are already there, that are already gone, really in that system. That's the beauty, is you pull that film up and you go, look, boys, doesn't that look similar? Right? So those were things that went into the hiring process, but great teachers, great men, because again, we're about creating and we're about developing great men. So this is what you're going to see from this staff. Excited for you to meet them, to interview them, because I'm sick of talking.
Dan Sorensen with Ute Zone.
Oh, Dan.
So, look, it's a new era of college football with the transfer portal, with NIL. What is your approach going to be, and how is it going to change from the previous coaching staff?
Okay, so I've always been about creating culture. Culture is what you believe, it's how you behave, and it's the experience that's delivered by that behavior. The experience has to be awesome, Dan. If the experience is not awesome, if they don't believe in the culture and they don't see the fruits and the benefit of the culture, they'll leave. So you have to create a culture that's strong enough that maybe a higher dollar figure, okay, doesn't sway. No, I'm happy with where I'm making enough money, and I love how I'm being developed, loved how I'm being taught. I know we're sitting here at the highest level. I can get to the highest level. I mean, Spencer Fano going to be first tackle taken in the NFL draft, right? We've had first round draft picks. We're in a great spot, right? And so you have to have a great culture. Then you have to have great support, which we have. Come on any given Saturday to Rice-Eccles Stadium, I think you'll see we got really, really good support. So the biggest thing to me is establishing a culture that people experience, right? Through their behavior, they experience greatness, and they don't ever want to leave it because they know they're getting the best.
Jason Batacchia from the Salt Lake Tribune. Morgan, you've talked a lot about just building your own identity, and obviously with the portal open, you can kind of build an identity quicker than maybe, in the past. Just This is kind of a two-part question for you. What are you, I guess, targeting in the portal to kind of extend upon the identity that, you had this year? And B, how do you plan on building that identity, and what do you hope it to be this year in your first year as head coach?
Well, the good thing is that my identity is very similar to Kyle Whittingham's. You win with physicality. Yes, I'm going to have my flavor and creativity that goes along those lines, but the identity is the identity. The good thing is the majority of these players, more on the defensive side, they know me. They know how competitive I am, how I'm going to pour everything into it. The offensive guys are learning. And man, am I so excited to build those relationships with the offensive players. And so what was your second question? I'm not a good two-part question guy. About the transfer portal. Okay, so you're always recruiting your own guys. They need to know that they're loved. They need to know that they're appreciated, right? Coach's job is to provide clarity, accountability, and support. And as long as you're giving them constant feedback, right? As long as you're continuing to tell them, hey, here's where we need to be, we're going to help you get there, that constant feedback is huge, right? You don't get many surprises with that. And this is change can be difficult for a lot of people. People leave an organization and there's doubt, there's fear, there's questions. How's it going to be? How's it going to go? What's going to happen, right? Fear has a significant psychological impact on the mind. To the fearful, it's threatening because it means that things may get worse. To the hopeful, it's encouraging because things may get better. And to the confident, it's inspiring because the challenge exists to make it better. I'm confident and excited for the future.
Josh Bennett, KSL Sports. Congratulations, first of all, Coach.
Thank you.
Just wanted to, you got thrown right into it. Bowl game, roster retention, filling out the coaching staff, you got the portal. How do you feel everything has gone thus far?
Man, I feel like it's my first birth and I gave twins. It's crazy. I'm just running around. And I'm a twin. And my mom had twins late, the last two, so she's told me all about it. But no sleep, hair on fire. That's why you get no prepared speech. Our coaches aren't here. Our coaches, you need to know the assistant coaches really, they don't get talked about. And we sacrifice so much. And they are people, and they're awesome. Special shout out to my best friend, Sharif Shah. My man. We sat after a second 5 and 7 season under Coach Witt. We had 2 5 and 7 seasons in a row. That second 5 and 7 season, we sat there, Kalani Sitake. Oh, by the way, I love Kalani. That's my guy. We went through the fire together, but he ended up going to Oregon State with Elisa Tuiaki, and me and Sharif were sitting in the defensive staff room alone, not knowing if we were going to have jobs. And I looked at him, and I said, okay, let's just put the film on, go to work. And thank heavens we kept our jobs. And we kept trucking, and here we are, brother. Love you.
Dana Green with ABC4. Talk about the importance of continuity and continuing what Kyle built here. And are there some definable characteristics that you can take from Coach Whittingham that you have taken and will incorporate into your coaching style?
100%. Toughness. You can never get away from it. Toughness, it's going to be exposed sooner or later, right? Depending on the quality of opponent. You will be exposed, right? Or you'll be up for the challenge. Number 2, family, right? That establishment of family and culture and togetherness, and we're doing this together, that is going to obviously carry on.
It's all about the players. You can find coaches everywhere. You got good coaches everywhere. It's about the players. Players are the reason we have jobs, not the other way around. So understanding your significance or insignificance in the role of this thing, right? Understanding it's all about the players, and players eat first, players ride first class, players, it's always going to be about the players. And those are the things that I'm going to carry over from the Kyle Whittingham era.
We got time for two more. Andrea Osi.
Hi, Coach. Andrea Urban with Fox 13. Congratulations. You definitely are filled with love and passion, and you just alluded to the things you're looking for in this program. What do you want your identity of Utah football to be? Just point blank, we are
physical. Does
I like it. I like it.
That?
Yeah, absolutely.
We are physical. You know, and then I would say we are physical and we are on the cutting edge.
Yeah. Easy.
Sean O'Connell, ESPN 700. Hey, Morgan. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good to see you. Congratulations.
So good to see you. It's my teammate, by the way.
Yes, equally important to the program as Morgan, for sure.
Stop it. Stop it.
So you just talked about something that every great coach talks about, how players are the most important thing. We already touched on the transfer portal and on the fearful nature, the uncertain nature. How have you communicated to your players to make them confident instead of fearful, to make them feel like this is the place for them, knowing they might have a new position coach, they don't know what the NIL situation looks like, all of that stuff? How have you worked towards retaining the guys you want to retain, given the landscape we're in right now?
Yeah, I think, at least from the defensive perspective, they've kind of known me, obviously Colton Swan, an unbelievable coach and teacher. So the continuity is a little bit more there, less change there. But when you see change on the offense, you know, I think the biggest thing is where were we last year? We were without an offensive coordinator. We were without a quarterback. You had guys transferring on the defensive side of the ball that were key components to our defense. And you had fear, you had questions, and so how many tackles did Jonah Lea'ea make 2 years ago? And look what he did this year, right? How many sacks did John Henry have 2 years ago versus this year? How many catches did Ryan Davis have? Touchdown passes did Devin Dampier throw? You have to trust the process that we're going to continue to reload and that we're continuing to get the right people in here. And to those who are fearful and want to leave, that's okay, because we will bring the ones that want to be here. And we will develop them and love them, and we're going to do everything we can. I've got an unbelievable coaching staff. The future is bright here. And at the end of the day, you're either in the boat or you're out. And yes, does it hurt to lose great young men? 100%. Particularly when you've poured into them. It tears at your heartstrings, right? But we have to focus on, okay, who wants to be here? And let's go develop them, right? To be that next year's group of guys you never heard of, or guys that didn't make plays for you the year before, but here we go. And like I said, I'm confident in our staff, confident in our players. We're going to get the job done.
Thank you, Morgan.
Can you believe we have to wait 8 months for football? Open up spring, Morgan. We want to come out and watch you guys train. One more big round of applause for the head coach of Utah football, Morgan Scalley. Thank you all for coming out. We'll see you back here in September. Go Utes!
All right, there you go. If you wondered why Morgan Scalley was the right man for the job, I think that 45-minute press conference may have answered your questions. So we'll start the show coming up next, but of course, a historic day up on the Hill as Ford Morgan Scalley, as we learned today, was just introduced as the 24th head coach in Utah football history. We'll catch a quick break. The rest of the show looks like this. Coming up on the other side, Stevenson Sylvester will join us. We're going to be joined by Terrell Burgess. We'll do a little hoop today with Tim McMahon, then back to football with Brett Ciancia. But if you missed the Morgan Scalley press conference, give James a couple of minutes. He'll have it up on ESPN700sports.com. The drive starts next right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. All right, welcome back in. Drive on a Tuesday afternoon. The majority, about 90% of the show today will be reacting to a historic day up on the Hill. About a mile and a half from where we're broadcasting right now, Morgan Scalley, Ford Morgan Scalley, for those of us that were unaware of his full name, was introduced as the 24th head coach of Utah football. Of course, news that we already knew as a result of Coach Witt stepping down. Morgan, the coach in waiting for 6 years now, officially takes the helm. We got some guests to talk about this. We've got Sly, who was up on the Hill. Porter, the producer of the program, is making his way back. We got Terrell Burgess. We're going to bring in Brett Ciancia. And throughout the course of the show, we'll just continue to touch on some of the things that Morgan talked about. James, we were discussing this during the break where, look, if you don't know Morgan, because Morgan himself said assistant coaches don't get talked about very much. And so I would imagine a lot of Ute fans have maybe heard of interview, hops on my show or Sean's show or whatever. That was 45 minutes of exactly who Morgan Scalley is. And I'm not surprised, but look, the old thing in our business is, did you win the press conference? And I think we can emphatically say that Morgan did.
Yeah, and listen, I've had way less interactions than you, OC, Bill, before on the station have had, but being able to listen into those interviews, being a producer of the program, for the Sean O'Connell show and for Bill before that, I certainly got a sense of that's what you expect from Morgan Scalley. He had a little bit extra than what he gives us in the coordinator's corners, and obviously he gives a little more of the coach speak in those interviews than he did today. I feel like he showed a lot more of his personality, which I didn't know if that was possible, Spence, because that's a guy that doesn't really hold back. But I was impressed with him doing that off the cuff, but it also does not surprise me at all that he was able to win the press conference, like you just said, without a prepared speech, because that's just fits with his personality.
Yeah, good point. James referenced this. That was just shooting from the hip, and I actually think he did a really good job of unpacking everything that he probably would have prepared anyway. Talked a lot about the new coaching staff, talked a lot about the transfer portal, talked a lot about Witt, and got emotional when talking about the former head coach of Utah football, Kyle Whittingham. Taylor Randall, Mark Harlan, and Morgan all thanked Kyle, and I felt like it was very sincere. And Morgan actually got emotional when he talked about Coach Witt. How about a shout-out for our guy, Bill Bush, friend of the show. Bill, longtime college coach, the one who decided that Morgan would be a great safety, and he, along with Coach Witt, convinced Morgan to change positions from wide receiver at the time. Morgan told the story at Highland High School. He was an insanely productive running back. He won the high school equivalent, whatever they call that high school Heisman thing. Morgan won that for our state as a running back. And he was an absolute bowling ball. It was tough to tackle. And he wanted to play running back at Utah because his father, Bud, played running back in the day. Morgan with a lot of praise for his mom and dad. And we learned that his first name is Ford, which is his father's name, and his grandfather's name. And his middle name is Scalley, which is his mother's maiden name. And a really cool anecdote and story about his mother's father, Morgan's grandfather, who unfortunately passed away. And Morgan thanked his mom. A lot of praise for his family, his wife, Liz, his children. If you've ever played sports on really any sort of competitive level, you know that when it comes to your coach, the family has to be all in. And my mom used to say whenever I'd go to dinner, like team dinner, she'd be like, go find your coach's wife and give her a hug and say thank you. So this will be a family affair with Liz, his wife, and Morgan. I just thought knocked it out of the park, man. I thought he did a really good job of showing you who he is. And he said at the start, because Taylor Randall, president of the school, then, of course, Mark Harlan, athletic director, both complimented Morgan's brain and his intellect. And when Morgan took the stage, he said, look, I'm not that smart, but I do have a big heart, and my heart is bigger than my brain. And I think he really, really showed that today during his press conference. An emotional moment between Morgan and Sharif Shah after a couple of 5 and 7 seasons when Kalani and Elisa Tuiaki went to Oregon State. Morgan and Sharif sitting in the defensive coach's room, and they were by themselves. And Morgan didn't really know what to do, so he said, let's just turn on some film and get to work. And fast forward 14 years later, Morgan's the head coach, and Sharif Shah stayed by his side when so many coaches went to Ann Arbor. So just really cool stuff. I mean, we might play some of that back later on. Like, I've known Morgan 25 years. I knew that was going to be good. I don't know that I knew it was going to be that good. So if you're a Ute fan that is a little bit, skeptical, fearful, which Morgan talked about. And look, winning the press conference is only winning the day, but there's 8 months until we know what the team looks like. So at least for today, if you listen to that, hopefully some of your fears have been alleviated. I do want to tell you about my friends at Prize Picks. Okay, new year, new you, starting a new routine or making player picks for the first time. Trying something new can be hard, but in life and on Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure playoff matchups every weekend and elite hoop action almost every single night, the action never stops. And Prize Picks lets you take control. New feature alert. Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. Find your community on Prize Picks with a new social feeds feature. You can share Prize Picks with your friends. Copy lineups from winners with a single click. You can copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us on ESPN 700 and tail or fade our picks with just one click. Bottom line, download the Prize Picks app today. Use that promo code ESPN 700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN 700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is always good to be right. All right, we'll catch a quick break, but more reaction from a historic day up on the Hill as Morgan Scalley was introduced as the 24th head coach in Utah football history, and Stevenson Sylvester will give us his perspective coming up after a quick break right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. Historic day up on the Hill. About a mile and a half away from our studio is where Morgan Scalley was just introduced as the 24th head coach in Utah football history. We'll react to that throughout the course of the show today. It'll take up about 90% of what we do. Our next guest joins us consistently to give us insight on Utah football. One of the best to ever do it up on the hill, Stevenson Sylvester. Sly, happy Tuesday, buddy. How we doing?
Happy Taco Tequila Tuesday, my man. How you doing?
There we go. I'm good. So, look, you've known Morgan for years, as have I. And Morgan himself, during the press conference, said, you don't really hear from the assistant coaches all that much. So there's a good chance, Sly, a lot of the community maybe just heard from Morgan for the first time. And I thought he absolutely killed it. 45, 50 minutes of showing you exactly who he is. Give me your takeaways. Give me your takeaways as far as, us hearing from Morgan and your thoughts on, how he handled the whole situation. Because I thought, in our business, they say, did you win the press conference? And I think for today, the answer is emphatically yes.
Oh, emphatic yes. I mean, 1,000%. I think he did a tremendous job. The flow was great from Harlan to Taylor Randall. Everything was said. Everything was appreciated. I really love how Morgan told the story of how and why he's supposed to be where he's at today, right? Of course, giving all the credit to the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, because honestly, that's where a lot of people lean, especially when you get done with football. You are searching for answers. You have no idea what you're supposed to do, because a lot of times as players, I can speak for myself, it's like you feel like you failed. And so it's just like, how do I go to the next thing when I got this big hanging, looming failure that I feel like I failed, and other people don't feel that way, but I feel like I failed. And so, like, how do you go to the next step? And for Morgan to say that in the toughest times of adversity and trying to figure out what I do, what I need to do, and who I need to be, I lean on him. And so he has a foundation. So if he's ever going through adversity as a head coach, you know where his mind is at and how he's going to get recentered and refocused. I think that is beautiful. And if he teaches that and impressions that upon his players, that to always find a foundation by looking up is absolutely terrific. And then going through his coaching progressions and all the people that brought him to the place, from his dad, his grandpa, and I didn't know, like, his dad's dad married into youth. He is deep rooted University of Utah. He is red through and through, and there's never been another job that has ever been entertaining enough. No money has been entertaining enough than the head coach of the University of Utah. And that's what the University of Utah fans got to know and understand. You got a guy who is a lifer, who will bleed, die, prepare, and make sure that your university, what you're so proud for, and that's what a lot of alumni are so proud about, is a guy that you know for a fact will die for this university is at the helm. And if there's ever a better transition than that, you got to tell me. And so Morgan Scalley just telling the story of why he's so invested in the University of Utah, how he got to this point, and how he's going to stay at this point, and really alluding to how his career will end here. And that's just a guy devoted to this place, and that's what you don't see so much nowadays, and what you can appreciate and love about this, and what I took away from the presser, man. And so I just love that part of the press conference. I think he handled it extremely well. Didn't have a prepared speech, but really went around the room and gave his thanks and just told how excited he is for this moment. It was a perfect press conference.
Yeah, and I was watching through the prism because I'm a father, and my son's grown now. He's 24, but when Whit was at the helm, I always would listen to Kyle, and every time I would talk to him, I'd want to basically walk away with the knowledge, like, if my son was a high-level recruit, would I trust him with this man? Right. And so I'm listening. I'm listening to Morgan today and kind of watching it through the prism of a father. And I would imagine if any recruits and parents were watching, the message should be pretty emphatically like, your son is safe with Morgan Scalley watching his back if you're going to send him to Utah.
Well, I mean, if you care about your kid, right? If you care about that's a real statement, and I hate that I have to even allude to that, because it makes me sick to think that there's parents out there who not thinking about putting their kid number one, right? If you care about your kid, right, you understand that the maturation period, the maturity period, it keeps going with year to year. And if you're in difficult situation after difficult situation, it doesn't matter how much money you got, because when that money runs out, what did you learn? And so what I loved about Morgan Scalley is exactly what you learned and what I felt when I played here at the University of Utah with Coach Whittingham is development in self, right? Understanding who I am, building skill sets and rapport and traits that are going to help me in every facet of life, not just on the football field. And I think that's what you're getting with Morgan Scalley, because that's what he appreciates and that's what he believes in and what he thinks and what he values is going to put the best product on the field. And what I love about football is when you have that understanding is you realize that it's not just what you do on the field that's going to make you play better on the field, right? It's everything. It's what you believe in. What are you spending your off time doing? What are you investing in? What are you, who are you talking to? Who are you revolving yourself around, right? Coach Whittingham I didn't understand why he said it so much, but it wasn't until later in life. It's just like, the guys in this room are going to be your friends for life. The people that you talk to, it's because you have the same mindset. You're going after the same goal. You're the same age. You're at the school at the same time. You're doing everything the same, and you're all going after the same goal. There's not that many chances in life that you're going to be side by side with people with the same mentality. And so the University of Utah really does a great job of bringing that out of people and making sure that they understand you got to watch who you're around, because who you're around, your circle is who's going to define you. And that's what I believe Morgan believes in. And so he wants people, and I love this too. He's like, guys are going to leave, you guys, but we want people that want to be here, right? That's who we're going to build around, because the formula is here and we're going to win. We put people out. We got guys who are starters that leave, and you can see that we replace those guys. And you see that he gave out Jonah Le'ea. Look at Jonah Le'ea 2 years ago versus this year. Right? Look at all these different examples of people 2 years ago versus this year. We develop and we put them out. If you want to stick around, you'll find success, bottom line, and not just in football this year, but in life after football.
So you're the perfect guy to ask this question, because Morgan's first year as a full-time coach on staff was 2008, and obviously you were a linchpin on that team that went undefeated and beat Bama in the Sugar Bowl that year. And a funny little anecdote with Morgan saying, it was my first year as a coach, we went undefeated, and I thought, okay, this is easy, and obviously it's not. But as a guy that was there for his first year and a guy that's been around the program now that we fast forward to 2026, Sly, my question to you is, how have you seen him grow as a man and as a coach, and what sort of dynamics or elements of his personality just remain consistent and the same?
I mean, the thing that's always been consistent is his passion, right? Even before he said it on the microphone when somebody asked to define himself, I said before, passion. When I look at Morgan Scalley, that's all it's ever been ever since I met him my freshman year, and then he became the GA and coach, and all that is passion. And that's something that you can't – it's just who you are. It's ingrained in him. And that's what I believe in, and that's why I think he's going to be an outstanding head coach, is because even when he doesn't get it right, I believe that he will have the passion to go get it right. There's a lot of guys who are dead set on this is just the way it is and can adjust, and I think that Morgan can adjust. He said that he wants to know this program to be cutting edge, which means ever evolving, which means I'm with the new, I know exactly what it is, and I'm always going to be in a winning mindset. And that's what I believe in. We're going to take after and see in this University of Utah program. So I'm very excited about that. But things that I saw was when his first year there, I felt like he was kind of a fish out of water. I felt like he was trying to force a lot of things that he was doing as a player onto being a coach, and it's not the same thing. And so I think he's learned over the years on how to do that, how to develop, how to get guys out of their other shell and bring the best out of them, because that's what coaches do. They bring the best out of the people around them, whether that's the administration or the coaching staff or players. They bring the best out of them, and I think that's what Morgan Scalley has learned over the years. But in that first year, I think he was leaning heavy on Coach Anderson and on Kalani and Coach Whittingham, because Coach Whittingham knows him as a player. Coach Anderson knew him as a player, right? And so I'm leaning heavily on how do these guys do it, and he was just a sponge. And that's just what he was as a player. From what I heard about him, is he just soaked up so much information and made it. That's why he was talking about his transition from running back to receiver to safety, and why he felt so at home is because of the investment that Coach Whittingham and these other coaches put into him and made him feel valued. And that's what he wants to do. So I just seen him grow. It's the same way I've seen Coach Whittingham grow since his first year. I was in Coach Whittingham's first recruiting class. I don't want to even say how long ago that was. But we're ever evolving, ever growing. And so what I can appreciate about a guy like Morgan, a guy like Coach Whitt, is you're growing. You're never staying the same. And I think that's why we got 21 years of Coach Whittingham, is because he was an ever-evolving coach and knew that you can't just stay the same and expect to win in this day and age.
So, Morgan, I was jotting down a bunch of notes because I was watching the presser here in the studio just on YouTube, and I think he said culture 7 times. And ultimately, culture is a thing that is it's not super definable because it's different for every coach. It's different for every program. And honestly, it can be different depending on the sport we're talking about. But I thought Morgan did a good job of outlining what he believes culture is and how you go about building culture. And, your daily habits ultimately will breed results, and then you let the results fall where they are. But as a guy that watched Kyle build culture and a guy that now knows Morgan and how he will build culture, how do you define what Utah football culture will look like under Morgan Scalley?
I just don't think that culture can be stated enough, and how important that is, and especially in football, because football is the ultimate team sport, right? It's the ultimate team sport because you have 70, 100, if you want to count coaching staff, 130 plus people that have to be on the same page. Everybody has to be on the same page. You got to lean on the man on your right and left. It's not like basketball. It's not like baseball. It's not like hockey. It's not like any other sport. There's so many people that have to be on the same page. And that is why Coach Scalley and Coach Whittingham just stress about culture. Because it doesn't matter if you guys are coming in for 6 months or 4 years, you have to adhere to the culture. You have to be a guy who can learn fast. And that's a guy who believes in culture and believes in the same things that you believe in. And that's how you create a team, right? Everybody talks about a family unit, right? A family unit is all on the same accord. That's the same thing a football family is. A football team and a football culture, they all have to be on the same accord. And if you don't believe in physicality, you don't believe in doing the right things, then you're an anomaly, and you're going to mess it up for everybody else, right? And one of the biggest, you've seen it in the facility, one of the biggest mantras on the wall is what? Do your job, right? And that means that the person that is to your left, to your right, behind you, in front of you, can trust that you are going to do your job. That's on and off the field. And that is culture. And that's what he preaches, and that's what he's teaching. He's teaching young men, right, straight out of high school. Even if they're transferred, they're most likely still very young. But you're teaching values and things that transition into so much more than on the football field. Of course, I think off the football field correlates to what happens on the football field. When we went undefeated in 2008, I still to this day, everybody was like, what was the key factor in doing that? And I'm going to say it was the time that we spent together in the offseason. That's culture, right? And we spent barbecues with the training sessions, hanging out, going paintballing together, taking road trips to Wendover and going to Vegas. And all. We spent so much time together in the offseason that I think it helped us. It benefited us. And during the season, that we can count on each other, that even when we're fighting, we know that we're all on the same accord. And that is what culture is. And I think that is what Morgan Scalley is impressioning upon this university, this football team, and whoever comes in and out of here is going to understand that takes precedence over everything else.
So, Sly, for anybody that's ever tried to do anything new, you know that the first time you try to do it oftentimes will not be your best attempt because things take time and things take reps. And Morgan, of course, has been properly prepared for this role. But the fact of the matter is he's had to build pretty much an entire new staff. And it looks like, at least as of now, the transfer portal has not been nearly as damaging as most people thought. So my question for you is, year one, Morgan Scalley, head coach, Big 12. At the end of next year, what would signal to you that, okay, we're on the right track? What does success look like year one for Morgan and Utah football?
Attitudes, players' attitudes, coaching staff's attitudes, demeanor. I mean, of course, I believe we're going to have a winning record. I mean, I don't know the schedule for next year. I'll be able to assess, but my first gauge without looking at opponents or anything would be we would have 8+ wins. And that's being very generous and trying to, not generous, but I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt of we're going to lose. I think that Morgan Scalley and this transition, I don't think there's going to be anything ever as smooth. I've never seen a smoother transition than what is happening within the University of Utah and all of college sports. You got a guy who's known he's going to be the head coach for almost 6 years. He's known he was going to be the head coach for almost 6 years. Coaching waiting for like 6 years. He's been able to learn, okay, what do I need to pay attention to success? We've got multiple Rose Bowls, multiple Pac-12 championships. We changed conferences. We changed opponents. We played big time. We went down to the swamp, SEC culture. He's been in the Big Ten where he's played at the Big House. He's played at USC. He's been to all these different venues. Tell me what Morgan Scalley has not seen, right? What he's not prepared for. Why he's able to make these adjustments so quick to Jordan Gross, to Derek Odom, to Kevin McGibbon, to all of these guys, because he is prepared. He's ready. He's ready to make. He understands what's the most important positions to have as assistant coaches, right? I have my DC that I want, a guy who's passionate. He's been training Colton Swan for the last few years. He's known that he's going to be the head coach. He's known that he can't call the plays and do all at the same time. To be a good head coach, and this is what I learned, in the pros, when we had success, it was because Mike Tomlin was allowing the coaches to coach. When we started falling off, Mike Tomlin was trying to do everybody else's job. He was trying to do the linebacker coach's job. He was trying to do Dick LeBeau's job on defense. And it just crumbled because the coaches didn't feel like you believed and valued in them. And so that Morgan Scalley understands that. Colton Swan needed to be upgraded into being DC, a guy that he knows. They have a rapport together. It's going to be a smooth transition. And I just love it. I just love the hires that he made. He's making a huge investment into Utah guys. And I love it, man. I can't wait to see this spring exactly how this team takes the field and what this final roster is going to look like next Friday, and all these different things, man. So, but tips my cap to Morgan. I think he's done a terrific job thus far with handling the bowl game and handling the character and the team energy during, people say tumultuous. I wouldn't say it was tumultuous. It was very distracting. I wouldn't say it was tumultuous. Transition of Coach Whittingham to, coaches leaving, adding coaching staff, having a team meeting, taking over at the helm. He's just done a terrific. This presser was perfect, right? We talked about it. He's just done a terrific job thus far. And if you were to write a script, I don't think you could write it better than how he's handled it.
Wanted to ask you about Sharif. An interesting moment for Morgan during the presser. And look, he said, you don't hear from the head coach, or the assistant coaches very much. You don't necessarily hear from the guys that are surrounding the head coach. You hear from the head coach more often than not. But he told this anecdote that after the second 5-7 season, when Kalani went up to Oregon State with Elisa, that Morgan and Sharif found themselves in the defensive coaching room by themselves. And Morgan didn't really know what else to do. So he said, let's just put on the film and go to work. And then here we are in 2026 as Morgan is the head coach and Sharif elected not to leave but stay by his side. And Morgan called Sharif his best friend. What does Sharif Shah mean to Utah football? And can you shed some light on the relationship between Morgan Scalley and Sharif Shah?
He's the youth, right? We try to define what that really means. Year to year, coaches are going to have to impression. What does it mean to be a Utah man? Me starting this brand line, I've asked, former players, people who've been around a lot, and the best answer I've ever gotten thus far was from Ron McBride. He said investment, right? Investment in this program. Ron McBride said that I've been invested in this program since 1970, right? My family's invested. I'm invested. We went to school here. We've done everything here. I'm still here today. And that's true and true. And investment means a lot of different things. You know, it's not just financial. It means sacrifice, right? When other opportunities come up, know where you want to be, right? When we talk about loyalty and morals and whatever's going into this NIL transfer portal and ever-changing coaching cycles is loyalty. And Morgan and Sharif Saw both played here at the University of Utah. Their heart is here at the University of Utah. They are Utah men through and through. You can see it in the passion. As we said, that's a key word revolving around Morgan is passion. You can see that same passion. You don't even need to hear Sharif Shaw purposely speak to hear Sharif Shaw. I hear interviews from Coach Witt, after practice, and guess who I hear in the background? Sharif Shaw. Sharif Shaw is known. He means so much to this program, and his investment is what Morgan Scally appreciates. His loyalty, his friendship, his candor, his honesty is somebody you want around you. It's what we all want in a best friend. Somebody who's willing to go to war with me no matter the situation. If I was right or wrong, you with me. And he's my ride or die. And that's what Morgan was saying in that instance. And I think everybody will say the same thing as they wish and they want that in their life. That's what they aspire to have in a best friend. When you say the word best friend, you got to say it has to mean something. It can't just be words. And that's what I love about Morgan. He's passionate. When he says stuff like that, you got to understand that he means that. And guys like Sharif Shaw and what he cares, and what another big thing that we point out in the press conference that he alluded to time and time again was coaching and investing in these kids. Who's a better teacher than Sharif? Who's a better person to invest and pour into young men than Sharif Shaw? He's a preacher. He's a lawyer. He's somebody who's outspoken and does not care what anybody thinks, but he wants to make sure that everybody does better for themselves. That's Sharif Shaw. And Morgan understands that. He's felt that ever since the day he met him. And even in the darkest times, they were there together and made that happen, man. And that story was tremendous. And you just understand what Morgan values and what he wants around him. And what, honestly, that little stuff is what he wants his players to be. That is what he's going to impression upon this program, is that value, that loyalty, and what it should be. And so, as I said, man, I cannot say this enough. I don't think there's ever a better person for the job than Morgan Scally.
Sly, good stuff today, man. Historic day. We'll set you loose. Thanks for the time. Be good, okay?
You're the man, Spence. Appreciate you.
Stevenson Sylvester, historic day up on the hill as Morgan Scally, Ford Morgan Scally, as we learned today, was introduced as the 24th head coach of the Utah football program. We'll continue this conversation throughout the majority of the show. And coming up on the other side, another former Ute will give us his perspective as Terrell Burgess will join us. Busy Tuesday show. It's good to have you with us. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, drive rolling along Tuesday afternoon style. Let's welcome in the producer of this radio show, who is busy up on the hill. Terrell Burgess is on the line. We're going to get to the former Ute in just a minute. I'll tell you what, Porter. I was back here in the studio, of course, holding the fort down. I watched it on YouTube. I don't know that could have gone better if you're Morgan Scalley. I thought he absolutely just knocked it out of the park.
And he mentioned it, right, all from the hip. He didn't carry any notes up there. He just showed up and was Morgan. And it's what you kind of expect if you know the guy. But man, he brought the energy, and if you felt at all skeptical, and I'll play skeptic here for just a moment, just to give you some insight. Right, I'm as big of a Kyle guy as you can get. Morgan's never been a head coach before, so hey, if you go in there thinking, what is this going to look like? Well, if you left that room thinking anything other than excitement and energy for what he is going to bring to Utah football, I don't know what you were watching. He bleeds a red and a certain crimson red that I don't know anyone else does at the level he does. So that was fun to be up there. And of course, yeah, he left a good taste in everyone's mouth.
We're going to bring that back around a little bit later because it was just so good. If you missed it, we'll make sure that you hear it again. And as Porter referenced, if anybody is skeptical about why Morgan was selected, I think that was about a 45-minute example and hopefully is alleviating some fears. Morgan played safety at Utah and coached our next guest and friend of the program. Always fun to catch up with Terrell Burgess on a historic day. Terrell, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. So I'm not sure how much of Morgan's pressure you were able to catch, Terrell, but it was very quintessential Morgan. Tell our listeners why you, as a former Ute, believe Morgan Scalley is the right man for this job.
Well, easily just because he's a great leader. He did a great job as leading the defense for the last 10 or so years, more or less. And I think from being in his room, being a safety, he did a good job of not only teaching us how to be, the best football players we could be, but to also be great young men in the way we go through life. So I think that's one thing that I always appreciate about him. He did a great job of teaching all the guys to come in there to, if anybody was just, I don't know. I feel like he just did a good job of just teaching us to be the best people we could be, and not only football players. And I think that's a big reason of why I think he's going to be great for this job, or he is going to be great for this job. And I'm excited to see how it works out.
So ultimately, of course, Morgan cut his teeth under Witt and was emotional when asked about his former mentor, of course, is now in Ann Arbor. Terrell, I'm not sure if you heard the news, but Kyle took that coaching job in Michigan. My question for you, as somebody that knows both of them, is what about Morgan do you remind you of Witt at all? And what about Morgan do you think will make him uniquely his own man as he coaches this team now?
I would say they both have I don't want to say stern, but they both have a great, all about the team mindset. And one thing that they both preached while I was there was you will become us, we will not become you. And I'm sure that he will continue that, during his tenure at Utah. And I don't think he's ever going to leave, but I think he definitely plans to keep that up. So that's one thing I would say, that comes to the mind off the top of my head. They have a love for Utah, and I just think he's going to be great for the job, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to ask you, just real quick, you're probably very busy with your own life. Did you catch any of the presser that went down today?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
But I was just on Twitter, and I did see a few quotes about it, and I'm just sure he did a good job.
Okay, just curious because I wanted to ask you about his relationship with Sharif Shaw, because there was a really cool anecdote that Morgan shared, and you know Morgan, he leads with his heart, and he himself said he's a bit of a baby. There was a lot of tears, a lot of emotion, and when he saw Sharif in the back, he started to get a little emotional and told this story of after the second 5-7 season, Kalani and Elisa Tuiaki went to Oregon State, and Morgan found himself sitting in the defensive coach's room, and it was just he and Sharif. It was just the two of them. And they weren't sure if they were going to be able to keep their jobs. A lot of heat on the coaching staff during that time, as you know. And Morgan said, I didn't really know what to do, so all we did was put on film and we went to work. And then, you fast forward to 2026, and not only is Morgan the head coach, Sharif is one of the very few coaches that declined an opportunity to join Kyle in Ann Arbor, and Morgan called him his best friend. So I have a two-parter for you. What does Sharif Shah mean to Utah football? And do you have some insight on that relationship between Morgan Scalley and Sharif Shah?
So to answer your first question, Coach Shaw is the fire, the energy, everything that obviously Coach Scalley, he went to Utah just like Coach Shaw did, and I would just say he's the fire, the energy, and everything that embodies Utah. He came to work the same day, every day, with energy that just, it's just something that makes you want to be a football player and love playing for him. So that's what I would say about Coach Shaw. He's a guy that I still communicate with to this day, and I'll always love him and always have appreciation for him and what he did to help me continue to grow as a man and a football player. And as for their relationship, they were always together when I was at Utah, always, making jokes and things like that. And I think that Shaw choosing to stay and go through this tenure with Scalley at Utah just shows a testament to the friendship and, brotherhood that they have together. And I'm excited to see how it comes out.
Since we haven't spoken to you since the news came down that your former head coach has a new address, what was your reaction? I mean, I'm still reeling, Terrell, quite frankly. And Coach Witt was on Dan Patrick's show today. He was on Rich Eisen's show. He has been all over the place and is now like a national figure in a way that he never was here in 21 years. But are you surprised? What are the emotions that went through you when you heard the news that Witt was moving to Ann Arbor?
If I'm being honest, when I had first seen the news that it said Coach Witt was stepping down instead of retiring, I had a feeling that he was going to look for, or either somebody was going to reach out to him. He's had a great, career at Utah and things like that. So I had a feeling that he was going to coach somewhere, but I didn't know where it would be. So I'm happy for him and the staff that he's created over there at Utah or at Michigan, and I wish him the best of luck. Obviously, I've always had respect for him, and I hope that they do well at Michigan. And hopefully, they make the playoffs next year and play against Utah. Obviously, I'll be rooting for Utah, but I'll silently be rooting for them if they do well. They just don't win the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's funny seeing the reaction because, of course, we're the home of the Utes, and that's my alma mater, so we're riding with Utah no matter what. But I think there's space to hope Kyle, does well there, and to hope Kyle, has success because of how much he has meant to this community and this football program. Do you have any insight on the relationship between Kyle and Morgan? Morgan was asked about Witt today and also became emotional, and just a big thank you. Do you have any insight on what that relationship was like?
Yeah, for as far as I know, that they had a great relationship because obviously, Scalley played there while Witt was coaching there. So for him to be able to play there and then coach under him for all of these years, it'd be crazy to think that they don't have a good relationship. So as far as I know, they had a great relationship, and I'm sure that he will always be appreciative for being able to learn from him and take a lot of the things that he learned from him into how he becomes the head coach and things like that for the future.
I don't know how connected you stay to your former teammates, but I would imagine because Utah football, part of the, one of the real pillars of Utah football under Witt and will continue under Morgan is family. So I would imagine you stay in touch with people. How would you articulate the way that the alumni are receiving the coaching change and now that Morgan is in charge?
I think for as far as I know, all the guys that I've spoken to about Scalley becoming the new head coach, we've all kind of expected it. We all knew that one day he would become the head coach, whether it be now, it'd been a couple years ago, or even in the future, whenever Witt did decide to step down. I think we all assumed that he would be the head coach and he would do well. So from everybody I've spoken to, they're all excited to see how he does, and we just know that they're going to do really well.
What does Terrell Burgess is with us, former Utah safety, and Morgan Scalley introduced as the 24th head coach, and obviously coached safeties for a while before he was the defensive coordinator. Now he's the head coach. Year one, Terrell, Big 12 football, and look, anytime you do something for the first time, there will be an acclimation period. There will be potentially some growing pains, and I think everybody's confident Morgan is the guy. But what does success, in your opinion, look like year one in the Big 12 under Morgan Scalley?
Success, I don't know. That's a good question. I think a lot of people are going to expect there to be some growing pains, and I think that comes with any season. You know, it's a new team every year in any level of football. So there will be growing pains and things he'll learn and things he's learned over the years. But I think for me, as long as they are, that's tough. I don't know. Because I always want them to go undefeated, but success doesn't mean just undefeated. I think success means competing in the Big 12 and giving themselves a shot at the playoffs. That would be success for me. And anything above, and that doesn't mean that if that doesn't happen, if they don't go to the Big 12 championship, if they're not in the playoff next year, that doesn't mean that it's a failure of a season. It's the first year of a new head coach. So I wouldn't say that's a failure, but I would say that is what I would view as success. And anything under that doesn't necessarily not mean success, but that's what I'm hoping for, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And, you know, I think oftentimes just the direction of, as you know, this is a results-orientated business, period, right? And, you know, if you lose, you can't keep the job. And if you win, it indicates that things are going in the right direction. But is there anything you would add to that outside of just like results? I know that sounds counterintuitive to a professional athlete where, you know, if you don't perform, you're going to get cut. And as a coach, if you don't win, you're going to lose your job. But when it comes to just the way the program is being handled, attitude of players, approach to the coaching staff, is there anything outside of just black and white results you would add to what progress or success looks like year one for Morgan?
I think today's college football is not even a little, it's a lot bit different than it was when I was playing, you know, just a few years ago. And I think with NIL and things like that, success also would not just be wins and losses. I think it would also have to do with the way people, the players are speaking about the coaches there and speaking about their time there. Being able to retain players, would be success as well. I think because, you know, I feel like every day I see a new kid from whatever school it is, you know, transferring out or transferring into a new school and things like that. And that's not to say that those coaches or those players, you know, didn't want to be retained. But, like, I think being able to retain the players and being able to have players come to your school out of high school or from JUCO or whatever and want to grow with what you're building, that would be, in my eyes, success, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely makes sense. Hey, give us the latest with you. I know you had latched onto the Saints. Is that where we find you these days, Terrell?
Yes, sir. Yeah, just finished up our 2025 season with the Saints a couple days ago. It was obviously bittersweet. You know, we would have loved to make the playoffs, but I'm just blessed to be able to make it out of this season healthy and excited to see what's next.
That a boy. Well, look, I appreciate your time. Historic day for your alma mater and Utah football, and best of luck to you. And most importantly, stay healthy, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
All right, Terrell Burgess, former Ute safety, now with the New Orleans Saints. Terrell has had a couple of different stops in his pro football career. He was with the Rams, the Giants, the Commanders for a little bit, the Bills, and then now he's with the Saints. And good to hear that he was able to finish out the season. And good perspective there from a safety who played at the University of Utah because, of course, that's where Morgan cut his teeth as a player and then as a coach before moving over as the defensive coordinator for Utah football. And now he is officially the 24th head coach in Utah football history. Let's bring Porter back in because he was up there live and I was down here at the studio kind of keeping things, where they needed to be to make sure we were bringing you all the sound from the presser. Watched it on YouTube, but it's always different when you're there in person. So I was jotting down a bunch of notes, Porter, throughout the course of the presser, and it's one thing to watch it on YouTube, but they only had one or two angles, so I wasn't able to see the reaction of former players or Liz, his wife, or his children, or Bud, his father. The YouTube feed was basically the dais and then who was speaking, and then they tried to kind of go over to the crowd. But I couldn't really see the reaction. How would you just kind of characterize, as the kids would say, the vibe up there since you were there live?
It was emotional. There's no doubt about that. And if you were listening live, you probably heard like a little dead period right at the beginning where me as a radio guy sitting there was like, come on, let's get this going. That was because Morgan took the dais and then saw Coach Ron McBride and got off the dais and went and they just hugged, started crying. And you could tell that this is a kind of a circle of people around Morgan that know that this guy has put in everything in order to get to this point. So yeah, man, beyond Morgan crying, I think like 4 times during his press conference, everyone around him was super emotional, but clearly very excited for an opportunity for a guy who, like we've talked about, man, if there's anyone in this ecosystem that deserves this shot and really, it's not that typical to have a head coach at this level. We call it P4, whatever it is now, to never have a head coaching job before. To have it kind of a unique situation here, I can't really think of a guy who does deserve it more without that part of his resume on. It was definitely heavy, but in a good way up there.
Yeah, and I wanted one question that was not asked. Only one question that was not asked, because Witt was on Dan Patrick this morning. He was also on Rich Eisen. The introductory press conference introducing Kyle in Ann Arbor. He's probably been asked about Ohio State 25 times. And I just wanted one person to ask Morgan about BYU.
Of course.
That's all I wanted, because, look, it's 3 straight. You say whatever you want to say about Utah, generationally, better record. Right now, BYU has the upper hand. And I can promise you that is a point of emphasis for Morgan Scally, who has been very front-facing and honest about the way he actually feels about that team down south.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Now, part of me is glad that, kept it red. He did sneak in a Kalani.
He did.
Shout out.
Yeah, he did.
But yeah, man, it's the one thing that you probably didn't get that it's going to be a big topic of conversation. You can go 10-2. You can go 10-2. I'll say that again. You go 10-2, 11-2 maybe.
Wait, when did that happen?
And you lose to BYU, and conversations will arise.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's just that's the reality of this state, the reality of this market, and something that you can bet with Morgan will be at the forefront. Only 1 week a year though. Only 1 week a year.
Well, here's the other thing that initially, as I was thinking about this, prepping for the show today, I was like, wait, are there any coaches left on staff that have BYU ties? And there is one. It's Marky. It's Marky Atuaya, who played at Brigham Young and coached down there. But I feel like Morgan, intentionally or not, might be moving away from that whole incestuous community feel where it's like, okay, we've all coached at both places. And he has said at least 4 or 5 times, made it very, very clear that he's only worn one logo his entire life. I don't know how calculated that is, but it feels like it's not necessarily a coincidence.
Well, yeah, no, I mentioned it. He bleeds not only red, but a certain crimson red, right? That I've never seen anyone to that level do it.
Yeah.
And with Morgan, it seems a little more personal than even Kyle, who, even though he came from that side, he kind of bought into the personal side of that rivalry. With Morgan, man, I mean, it's not 18 years, 20 years, 30 years like Kyle Whittingham. He's been at the University of Utah since he was 18 years old, right? The second he left Highland High School, he was headed to the Hill, and he's been there every day since. That's just something you can't replicate. It's something you can't fake. And Morgan wears his logo on his sleeve as much as his heart.
Yeah, and I love the intro because Taylor Randall, president of the school, and Mark Harlan, athletic director, both complimented Morgan's smarts and his intellect and his brain. And then Morgan steps up and grabs the mic, and he's like, hey, I'm not that smart. I don't have a big brain, but I do have a big heart, and my heart is bigger than my brain. And then he sees his wife and children and says, I'm a baby, and, that's my best recruiting job. And, of course, his wife, Liz, will be a big part of this. But then after he said, I'm a baby, he said, oh, and also we're going to tear your face off. Just so you know, it was like a perfect,
It was the only quote
dichotomy.
that I felt like I had to tweet out from the whole press conference. I'm a baby. I'm emotional right now. But also come August, late August, early September, we are we're going to rip your face off.
Yeah.
That's Morgan's identity right there.
Right. And it's one thing to win the press conference. And if you had a chance to watch on YouTube or if you had a chance to listen on our station, I would be stunned if anybody out there didn't think that went well. And I will be honest, I had confidence that it would go well because I've known Morgan 25 years. It even exceeded my expectations. He did not prepare a speech because, as he said, he has been busy. I don't know if you've noticed, he's had to, rebuild an entire coaching staff and, re-recruit like his entire roster. And they did make some announcements today, or some announcements have been made today about additions via the transfer portal. We'll get to those announcements coming up in just a little bit, and then we'll try to look ahead to next year and answer the question, what does success look like for Utah football year one under Morgan Scalley? I'll tease this. I mean, the schedule actually is rather favorable. What I have in front of me, the schedule next year, Utah avoids Texas Tech. They get BYU at home. The non-con schedule is Idaho, Arkansas, and Utah State, and all those games are at Rice-Eccles Stadium. This could be inaccurate, and it could change because scheduling and TV windows and all that stuff. But we'll dig into the schedule. We'll get you up to date on the transfer portal, who has decided to come back, and potentially who will come back or who might take off. Still about a week left in the transfer portal or so, something like that. So nothing, of course, is official, and we are 8 months away from kickoff. So what the team looks like right now could be vastly different than what the team looks like coming up next fall. But a historic day here in Salt Lake City, a historic day at the University of Utah, as Morgan Scalley has been introduced as the 24th head coach in Utah football history. I want to remind you that League One Volleyball is Salt Lake's first professional volleyball league. The next home game is January 22nd. Get tickets at lovbsl.com. That's lovbsl.com. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. We're going to do a little basketball coming up on the other side with Tim McMahon. Then the rest of the show will be reaction to the historic day up on the hill as Morgan Scalley is now officially the 24th head coach in Utah football history. It is The Drive on a Tuesday afternoon, and it's good to have you along for the ride right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. All right, the Jazz are off tonight. They're back in action coming up tomorrow against Oklahoma City. They lost to the Blazers last night. Back in it as far as keeping that pick. If the season ended today, the Jazz would draft 7th, which means they would hold on to it. It wasn't too long ago they were down to 10th. So I don't know. You tell me. Tim McMahon joins us on a Tuesday afternoon. Timmy, happy Tuesday, buddy. How we doing?
Howdy, partner. Doing just fine. How are you?
I'm well. I appreciate the time as always. So the Jazz have now lost 4 straight. They've now lost 9 of their last 11. They did squeeze a random back-to-back 2-game winning streak over 2 of the better teams in pro basketball. But as far as what we're seeing now, they said they're not going to manipulate minutes to lose games. It feels like they are. But just your overall thoughts on where we find ourselves with the Jazz right now.
Well, I spend a lot of time in Oklahoma City, and the Utah Jazz are a frequent topic of conversation in OKC. They're certainly studying those injury reports really closely and bracing for that top 8 protected pick turning into dust. Look, simple fact of the matter is I know what they said. They're going to make sure that they keep that pick. Yeah. It's malpractice not to do it. It's a tough way to go about an NBA season. It's no fun. And especially hey, the Jazz clearly aren't a terrible basketball team when they're putting all their guys on the floor and trying to win. And there's been some really good developments that have come out of this season. Primarily, they've got a cornerstone type of player, it looks like, in Keontae George. He's made such a massive leap that it's at the point where, he's going to get sick from time to time and all that, might be some soreness in various parts of the body that he discovers when he shows up to shoot around and those sorts of things. But, the good news is next year there's no reason for the Jazz to continue this route. And everything I understand is that their plan is to be as competitive as possible next season. That, obviously is going to kind of help guide them as they approach this trade deadline. And I guess what I'm trying to say there is I'll be surprised if Larry Markkanen's moved. I'll be surprised if somebody pays the kind of price that it would take to get the Jazz to seriously consider giving up a guy who they love. And, the Lowry-Keontae combo gives them a chance to be competitive next year.
Yeah, the Keontae stuff, and we talk about it every week, but the reason we talk about it is that if it is real, it does change some things. I mean, last year there were moments where you're like, dude, is this guy even going to be in the league? And then according to things that I've heard you guys talk about on the Hoop Collective and things that I've talked to you about, the reports from the team was like, this kid just would not get out of the gym. I think he got the message that if this year doesn't look better, you might be playing in Europe or maybe the G League to try to get back in the NBA. What about the start of the season in your mind from Keontae is now the time to just say, okay, this is real? And what portions of his game are you still looking to maybe see some improvement in?
I mean, as much as anything, it's just the consistency. Like, he is consistently, their primary facilitator and initiator. And there might be some, there's going to be some ebb and flowing as far as the efficiency. A lot of that's is he knocking down a three or not. But, dude, this guy has shown that night after night after night, he can generate offense on a consistent basis. And no fear. Like, he's the Cojones Factor Player of the Month. I don't know if you heard on the Hoop Collective, but I gave him that honor. Like, this is a guy who wants the ball down the stretch of close games and is making shots to beat the Detroit Pistons, making shots to give you the lead with 4 seconds left against the Magic, knocking down a go-ahead three in the last minute of a win against the Grizzlies. And, showing he can be the primary initiator, shown that he can be a guy who you want to have the ball in his hands late in close games. And then areas of improvement, I think obviously defense. I think that gives him a lot in common with every single guy on the Utah Jazz roster. If you want to look at the defensive efficiency rankings, you can line up every team in NBA history, and you're going to have to scroll all the way down to the bottom to find these Utah Jazz. So, obviously he's got to be part of this franchise and this team getting a lot better on that end of the floor. But in a league that's more about offense than ever, he's a really, really good offensive player.
Yeah, and that certainly is the area that should be underscored because it is important in this day and age of so many teams playing a similar style of basketball, and that's not by accident. The rules just kind of indicate that this is the way to go with 5 out, beat your man off the dribble, try to shoot threes, and there's some intricacies depending on which coach you're talking about. And Will was hired with the reputation of being an offensive guy with certain ideas of how the ball is supposed to move and certain ideas about spacing on offense. And they're one of. At one point, they led the league in assist percentage. I haven't checked in the last couple of games. They're still right there. But to your point, we're tracking for the 4th straight year of them not just being bad defensively, but being like the worst team in pro basketball defensively. At what point do we wonder whether or not that anything about that dynamic does have to do with coaching, or are we just going to continue to go with they just don't have great personnel?
Well, I think that we can start to wonder about whether that has to do with coaching when winning becomes a priority for the front office.
Yeah.
I mean, just to be straight up. And look, there's some personnel things, but as far as like scheme and all that kind of stuff, like when Will's coaching with one hand behind his back, I'm not going to sit here and put too much fun on him. I can tell you, I was talking to one of the best GMs in the league recently, and unprompted, he just went on a soliloquy about what a great coach, young coach Will Hardy is, and about how tough it's got to be and how disappointing it has to be for him not to be able to be in a position to this point in his career where he has a chance to win as many games as possible. And again, next year that will change. I do believe, and everything I've heard is that the Jazz are going to be doing everything they can to win as many games as they can next year. And we'll see what kind of personnel they have in place at that point, and whether, like this year, if the Jazz wanted to, they could absolutely get in the play-in mix in the Western Conference. It's not as deep as people thought going in. Whether they can do that next year, be a cut above that, we'll see. There's a couple transaction cycles between now and then.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I tend to echo the sentiments about Will. I badly want to see him coach a team where the personnel gives him a fair fight every single night. And I do think he's maximized what he has had at his disposal. But then, the numbers are the numbers, and it just makes it difficult to cover a team when you really know what the deal is when it comes to a roster construction standpoint and how you go about things in the NBA. But ultimately, when it comes to the trade deadline, you already referenced you would be surprised if Markkanen has moved, and I'm with you. But the Jazz actually have had some really good production from some veteran players that if you're a veteran team that needs to add a piece to potentially solidify your roster, do you look at a Yusuf Nurkic, who's been really good, surprisingly? Do you look at a Kevin Love? Yeah. Do you look at a Kyle Anderson? Any of these vets, do you think garnering interest around the NBA?
Yeah, I was actually talking to a scout. I'm out here in L.A. I was at the Warriors-Clippers game last night. I was talking to a pro personnel director, actually, from another team, and they brought up Nurkic as a guy they've got their eyes on that they think could end up getting moved. And look, he was, like Phoenix was desperate to dump him last year, and the Hornets were certainly happy to part with him. But he has been good in Utah. There are certain, he's also starting at center for the worst defense team in NBA history. But there are certain things that he does very well that could be of value to a team that's looking for an experienced backup big man. And look, you're asking me about these guys. Obviously, you're asking me not expecting that there's going to be some massive return in any of these deals.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
These aren't going to, you're not getting first round picks for these guys or anything like that. But those are the guys that I could see any of those three guys, or maybe even all those three guys being moved. I don't know. Slow-mo, we've barely even seen on the floor this year. I don't know that Kevin Love or him have any value really in the trade market, but maybe there's a situation where a team wants a veteran and the Jazz are willing to move them to a place that, that they can kind of be in a more competitive situation, I would say.
A little bit of a non sequitur, and I'm genuinely just curious. Do you know what Zanuck's role is around here these days? I haven't seen or heard from him in months.
I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I couldn't tell you exactly what the intricacies are of the new regime over there, because before he was the day-to-day GM. He was the guy who was handling all the things you think of that are typical GM do. And then Danny Ainge ultimately had the juice, if not decision-making power, as close as you can, like basically Ryan Smith would go whatever Danny Ainge wanted. But Austin Ainge has obviously come in there, and he is the day-to-day guy. Justin is working under him. How exactly his responsibilities have changed or what his primary duties are at this point, that I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, genuinely just curious, because once upon a time we'd hear from him quite a bit, and we haven't heard from him all year. All right, away from the Jazz now, as we're less than a month away from the deadline, what are you hearing? Names that could be moved that actually mean something, not Yusuf Nurkic to the Clips. What are you hearing prior to the trade deadline?
Well, obviously I'm based in Dallas, and so a lot of my attention is on Anthony Davis, and I continue to think that it will be difficult for the Mavericks to find a deal there. Anthony Davis would prefer to stay in Dallas and get an extension this summer. I would say the extension this summer is much, much, much more important than staying in Dallas. And then part of this equation is you have Rich Paul as his agent, who's involved in all of this and is trying to make sure that he lands somewhere where they are willing to give him an extension. And I'm talking about like a max type of extension for a guy who's got a max year and a max player option left on his contract. So, Atlanta's popped up. I think that the Hawks are the most likely destination, but I don't think it's likely. I think he probably stays in Dallas for the rest of the season. To me, it makes sense to probably try to shut him down after the deadline pretty soon, if that's the case. And there's a moment of truth coming this summer, because he's either going to be extended or it's not going to be a pleasant situation, or they're going to trade him before it gets to that.
So when it comes to the Trae Young stuff, I just feel like we hear this every year. He just seems like the name that, whether it's prior to the deadline or in the off season, most likely to be moved. And I honestly don't know where his value is right now, as far as can you win at a high level if you have that much of your cap allocated to him. But it hasn't really worked consistently. I think a lot of people in Atlanta are surprised, and our guy Quinn Snyder coming under a little heat. Is this finally the year where the Trae Young rumors lead to a Trae Young trade?
I'm pretty certain about that at this point. And the reason for that is because this is the first time that it's gotten to the point where the Hawks aren't looking for value for Trae Young, right? If they could have gotten value for Trae Young, they would have traded him instead of DeJounte Murray when DeJounte went to the Pelicans. That's just a fact. At this point, they're not expecting, some kind of they're not trading superstar Trae Young. They're trading Trae Young, who has a $49 million player option next year that we want no part of having. So, I think it's pretty likely that Trae Young ends up getting, like Washington's a team that's come up. That'll be about expiring salary coming back, not about picks or anything like that. I'm pretty sure that the Hawks would be more than happy to trade Trae at this point and just get expiring salaries in return.
Yeah. All right. Before I set you loose, we revisit this. And Oklahoma City's lost 2 straight. So here we go. They're going in the wrong direction. San Antonio, when healthy, might be the answer here. But, as we are getting closer and closer to halfway done through the regular season, I think a lot of people just believe that the All-Star break is halfway, and maybe halfway in the calendar, but the regular season, we're getting close to halfway done. Team that can give Oklahoma City the biggest fight during playoff time is who and why?
I think you have to say the Spurs, because they beat them 3 times in the span of 12 days, and the last 2 were butt whoopings. And, look, I still think the Thunder are the clear-cut favorites. There's no question, though, the Thunder are going through a funk right now. I think that all the hype was heavy on them. I think Jalen Williams coming back off that wrist surgery is, there's a process that he's still going through to try to get comfortable. They've had guys in and out of the lineup. Hartenstein is out right now. I think that's put a toll on Chet Holmgren. Shea, to me, looks like he's fatigued, maybe mentally as much as physically. I still think they're going to be a 65, 68 win team that's going to be the number one overall seed. But you have to recognize the fact that San Antonio was 3-0 against them. And again, the last two were very convincing wins. And then look, man, the Nuggets took them 7 games last year. If Joker's healthy, the Nuggets absolutely are going to have a chance to beat anybody that they line up against, including the Thunder. Again, they took them to 7 last year. So those two teams for sure are legitimate challengers.
All right, my guy. Well, we are inching closer and closer where football is ending around here, so we'll move into the space of covering pro basketball, and hopefully next year we're covering a team that's trying to win. But in the meantime, thanks for your time. Be good. Safe travels, okay?
I appreciate you.
All right, Tim McMahon, NBA Daily Assist style. We're still pretty college and pro football centric, and of course the CFP will resume coming up this week. I want to remind you, we are your home of the college football playoff. You can hear all the games on our station, and a bevy of NFL wildcard action coming up this weekend as well. And as football season kind of comes to a close, even though the offseason in both college and pro football now is very topical, and we'll continue to cover it. At some point, we'll try to lean into some more NBA coverage on the program. It's hard covering the Jazz. It just is, because I know how this stuff works, roster construction behind the scenes, and they're unserious about competing. And it's been 4 years. So this is, as Tim referenced, this is the final year. You have to keep that draft pick in mind because the protections go away. So you hold on to the asset, and you have to. There's no other way to put it. You hold on to that asset, which you have to do. It would be malpractice to allow a top 8 pick to get away from you when you operate in a small market and you're in the process of a rebuild. And then next year you go all in to see at least what you could do. Now, next year, will they be close to Oklahoma City, San Antonio, maybe even Denver if Jokic continues to be the best player of this generation? I don't know that the Rockets will sustain this success. It feels like a 1-year all-in with Durant. LeBron at some point will go away, but the Lakers have been good, and a lot of that has actually not been with LeBron. The future there is bright because they have Luka, who is 26. Minnesota, we'll see what Phoenix does. Golden State appears to be on the way down. But could the Jazz next year win 35 to 38 games and make it in as a play-in team? Maybe, and maybe that's your first sign that we're inching closer and closer to a team that's relevant, because they're just not. The Keontae stuff is interesting, and it does change things. Now, for all the celebration about Keontae as a bucket getter, which is who he is, an individual scorer, the decision-making is getting better. It's still not great, and this kid does not play a lick of defense. But here's the thing. Neither does the team. We're inching closer and closer now for 4 straight years where the Jazz aren't just bad defensively. They're the worst team in pro basketball defensively, and they're, on paper, the worst team in the history of the Utah Jazz. So I continue to kind of err on the side that this is a personnel issue, not a coaching issue. But at what point are we like, dude, can we get a little improvement defensively? It just hasn't been there. And before you say, well, Walker isn't healthy, it wasn't good with Walker in there. In a way, this tells you the brilliance of Rudy Gobert, which is why when Walker kind of landed on the ground and certain members of our media were like, hey, he's better than Rudy already. It's like, dude, stop it. I know you work for the station that broadcasts the team's games, but Rudy operated in the space where he did not have great perimeter defensive help, but the Jazz were still a top 10 defensive team, and it was almost primarily because of Gobert, who, by the way, has been brilliant this year. I don't know how much T-Wolves hoops people are smashing around here. Rudy might win his 5th Defensive Player of the Year award. I mean, he continues to be awesome. The Cavs aren't great, which is interesting. They've had some injuries. Now there's word that Donovan might be getting gone. Okay, it's Cleveland's problem now. It's not our problem. Good stuff today from Tim McMahon, though. All right, the bulk of the show today, historic day up on the Hill, in case you missed it. Ford Morgan Scally, introduced as the 24th head coach in Utah football history. Did you know Morgan's full name? Did you know Morgan's name was not Morgan Scally, but Ford Morgan Scally?
I think I knew that he went by his middle name, but I don't know that I actually knew that his first name was Ford. It's because he told me once about his family name was actually Morgan, the last name, and that's why his first name he goes by Morgan. But yeah, so now we know.
Well, and he also, if we needed any more proof that Morgan was, we'll just use the term, a Utah man through and through, he actually revealed the origin story of his name. Ford is his father's name. His father's nickname is Bud, and Bud played running back for Utah back in the day. And then Morgan is his mother's maiden name, and Morgan's grandfather on his mother's side told this anecdote and told a story about an uncle, just massive Utah family on both the mom and the dad's side. Morgan is the youngest in his family, and I know his brother Taylor. They're all Utah people. I mean, he even utilized educating people about his name as a way to just prove that he was 10 toes down even more with Utah football.
Right. Oh, and by the way, that Morgan grandma married to a guy named Ken Garf.
Yeah. Yep.
Just a little aside there. So yeah, there's, clearly a Utah guy with ties and connections that are too deep in this program to pull out, even if you wanted to. Right? He could go somewhere else, and he'd still be a Utah guy.
Do you think I'm safe to share my Spence Checketts story now after the BYU game? I told you the story. Now that the coaching change has happened, do you think I'm safe? I think I'm probably safe.
You probably have to now that you said it on air.
Well, I don't have. That could be a tease. I could say you have to listen until right before 6 o'clock, and maybe I'll say it during the final segment.
You could do that too.
Well, Spence was in attendance, my guy. And I do have to say, every time they thank Spence, I feel like they're thanking me. But
Maybe they are.
They're not. They're thanking Spence Checketts. And you referenced the Garf tie to Morgan. The money guys wanted this. They just did. And we told you that right from the start for all the people that were piling on Kyle for dragging his heels or saying Morgan was making a power play or this was Harlan or Randall. It was the money people. We don't need to remind people the golden rule. If you listen to the show, you know our golden rule. But I always say, if you follow the money, you're going to find the truth. And after the BYU game this year, after BYU beat Utah, I had an opportunity to attend an IHC fundraiser with some people, and I found myself sitting next to a certain former Utah alum. And I said, don't ask him about BYU. Don't ask him about the game. We're here for something different, hanging out. And right before I left, I did. And all he did is, I said, what'd you make of the BYU game? And I think it was the first time he actually directly made eye contact. He turned around and said, field goals are important.
3 points is 3 points.
And we went our separate ways. And we all know what happened there.
Very few words.
No, very few words. But Spence Checketts in attendance today. And I said this yesterday. Of course, if you're a Utah fan, you owe a tremendous amount of gratitude and you're in a tremendous amount of debt to Spence Checketts. The reality is, if you're a sports fan in any way, shape, or form in this market, Spence is one of the most underrated figures. He gets his credit for Ute fans. I mean, his name's on the stadium. But he was the one that back in the day allowed Larry Miller to borrow against his dealerships to keep the Jazz here. I could go on and on. And, I'm biased, obviously, great guy. And, if you're a Ute in any way, shape, or form, you owe him a lot of gratitude. But Taylor Randall, Mark Harlan, and Morgan all pointed out him being in attendance. He had his red jacket on, looking like a Utah man. So, historic day up on the hill. Morgan Scally introduced as the 24th head coach in Utah football history. If you missed it, we're going to play it back. And I don't typically do that because it was 45 minutes, but it was just that good. So stay tuned in the 5 o'clock hour. If you missed it in its entirety, we're going to play that for you. But let's talk more football coming up on the other side. Brett Ciancia, Pick 6 previews. What does he make of Utah's new coaching staff? What does he make of the transfer portal, either giveth or taketh away? I'll tell you what, from my seat, if you're a Utah fan, if you're a BYU fan, it doesn't look nearly as dire, certainly as I was expecting, as far as what we know now. The transfer portal's still open. I think we have 9 days left, thereabouts. But we'll bring in Brett coming up on the other side. We'll get to the 5 o'clock hour of the program. Coming up at 6 o'clock, you'll hear the Alex Jensen Coaches Show from last night. Of course, Utah men's basketball now making their way into Big 12 play, and a lot of progress needed as far as, the hoop side of things. We'll cover it, after football kind of moves to the side. So a lot to do Tuesday Drive. It's good to have you along for the ride right here on ESPN 700. Historic day here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Morgan Scalley officially introduced as the 24th head coach in Utah football history. So if you missed that press conference, number one, you can go to our website, which is ESPN700sports.com. We will bring that back to you coming up in just a little bit. But let's talk more college football. One of my favorites. Always fun to spend some time with Brett Ciancia from Pick Six Previews. Brett, happy Tuesday, man. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me on. And yeah, it's a historic day for the Utah program. What an opening press conference there by Coach Scalley. One of my favorites in the industry, in the business. I've talked to him for several preseasons while I'm putting together my preview magazine, Pick Six Previews. And yeah, I feel really good for the guy and for the program.
So let's stay in the space for a moment. And of course, you know, we have actual college football games to talk about, which we will in a minute here. But Brett, as you know, it has been a wild news cycle here in Salt Lake, where about a month ago now, 3.5 weeks ago, thereabouts, on a Friday afternoon, we received the email that Kyle Whittingham is, quote, stepping down. It did not say retire. And then Whit gives some public comments, and it became very clear that this was not a man who was done coaching. And around the same time, Sharon Moore lost the Michigan job in spectacular fashion. And so Whit lands in Ann Arbor, and Morgan moves over one seat to take over for Kyle. I just want to know, as somebody who covers this sport as well as anybody out there, what has this news cycle been like for you to digest?
Oh, well, it's been crazy. I mean, it might be the most wild coaching carousel of all time, really. And that was before the Michigan and Utah shift. You remember throughout the season there was coach firings back to September, October, and then a huge firing cycle after Thanksgiving weekend, the rivalry weekend. So it was already crazy enough. And then you had the Michigan story. And then, of course, the transition there at Utah. And Coach Whit, you know, he leaves a heck of a legacy behind. I think all the way back to the undefeated team in 2008, even his share in building the 04 team, and then really going on a journey with Utah, making them the first non-AQ to move up to the Power 4 level, and then kind of the crowning achievement of that transition coming with the back-to-back conference titles. So it's been a pleasure to watch Utah over the years. I do some writing there at KSL. I like to cover Utah and BYU throughout the season, the offseason. And what I love about Utah is their physicality on defense, the way they fly to the ball, their ball-hawking nature. And I know that's going to continue now under Scalley, him being the defensive coordinator. And from his quote today, which I loved, which he says, our team's going to rip your face off. And, you know, some coaches say stuff like that, but, you know, with him and this program, they back it up. I mean, it is a physical brand of football, and it's refreshing to watch.
So a couple things. We're hearing that Bryce Underwood is going to play for Kyle, and Jason Beck has been hired as the offensive coordinator. And, of course, Jason was here last year and just did a dynamite job. Utah football, one of the top rushing attacks in the country by a few metrics, actually the best. And then, look, the transfer portal is still open. We're still 8 months away from football, so we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. But based on what you know about Whit and what you know about Michigan's roster, how do you think it's going to go?
Well, you know, I think his brand of football fits with what Michigan wants to do and what Michigan was successful with on the national title run, and that's big offensive line, power run game, and solid defense. And that's been Whit's formula, and that's been Michigan's formula. But this is something I'm wondering about, and we'll monitor this over the next couple seasons. I always found Coach Whittingham as old-fashioned in the sense that he was excellent at player development, at scouting, at player identification. How many times did you see players recruited at one position that he shifted over to a new one and they excelled? You know, more of like a longer-term program build. And that's just not the era we're in nowadays with the lightning-fast transfer portal, the player acquisition, the contracts. It just seems like a whole new world now. So I love his style of play, his style of coaching. I don't know how it's going to work in this 2026 and beyond crazy, you know, roster changes every year. At Utah, it was somewhat unique that he was able to maintain the continuity of the locker room, minimal transfers out, you know, really developed them over 4, 5, 6 years. I don't know how common that's going to be going forward.
On the other side, you know, I think a lot of people, and I'll speak for myself, certainly expected maybe a number of players to enter the transfer portal and follow Whit to Michigan or end up elsewhere. And look, even if Kyle was here, players were going to leave because that's the nature. And they haven't been completely unscathed. Smith Snowden, Tao Johnson, John Henry Daly. So 3 players on defense that Utah probably wanted to hold on to have entered the portal. No word on where they're going to end up. But on the offensive side, really no one of consequence just yet has entered the transfer portal, Brett. So based off of what we know now and based off of what you know about Morgan, what do you think year one for Utah football in the Big 12 under Morgan Scalley is going to look like?
Yeah, well, I think it's a good sign that there weren't many losses there on offense, but there is a big one with Jason Beck, the OC. And you talked about it earlier, just how excellent he was. Really transitioned Utah out of they were really struggling in the last couple of years. A lot of it was injury driven, a lot of it injury at the quarterback spot in 23 and 24. So to see the huge change into 2025 as one of the most dynamic rushing attacks in the country, phenomenal job. So we'll see what they look like offensively, scheme-wise. I want to probably keep going with what worked here. But what you're going to get with Morgan Scalley, I know on defense every year, doing my preview magazine, it's almost just plug and play. And I don't say that condescendingly. It's almost just like he builds these backups, these third stringers, and it's just a long-term build. So whenever these star players leave, you just have new stars rising to the occasion, and it's always next man up. Yet again, another slogan that you hear everywhere, but really they back it up at Utah. So I know it'll be a top 5 defense in the conference for sure, no matter who's starting and who's playing. Now it's a matter of what the offense looks like. So, they remain a contender in the Big 12 heading forward. I do want to really monitor what they do in the portal here. These next 2 weeks are going to be huge, and that's for everybody in the conference too. I know Texas Tech is going crazy with their spending and their talent acquisition. So keep an eye on Texas Tech again. But no, Utah should be a contender in year one.
Jason Beck, a loss for the Utes on offense. Jay Hill, a loss for BYU on defense. Your thoughts on what that could look like for Kalani and where you're at now with BYU, who, like Utah so far, Brett, has not lost a ton to the transfer portal. They're going to have some players move on and try their hand at the NFL, LJ Martin, Chase Roberts, and others. But your thoughts on where we find ourselves with our other team here, and that, of course, would be BYU.
Yeah, well, it's a similar situation there with how Jay Hill came in and really transitioned BYU's defense. I think it was the middle of, I might have my year off, but middle of 22 or 23 seasons, they really collapsed and had a midseason firing there at DC. It was a really conservative, drop 8 into coverage every snap kind of a defense back then. And they hired Jay Hill. He comes in, brings his aggressive style of play, and they tear it up. And I think that the defense, and specifically Coach Hill, are the key reasons why they made such a run last year, and then of course this year to the conference title game. So how does BYU respond and backfill Coach Hill? It's going to be huge in the same sense that Utah will have to backfill Coach Beck. So, but yeah, I was really impressed with BYU this season, all the way out to the conference title game. Got to see them live in Lubbock. I went down to the Texas Tech BYU game, and while they lost the game, I was really impressed with how they bowed up in the red zone, kept Texas Tech out of there, just emblematic of their program. So yeah, they'll remain a contender. I think that they have this thing going the right way. You're seeing them increase their talent acquisition too now with some big time recruits, big time transfers coming in. So yeah, both the Utah schools, Utah and BYU, are in good shape heading into their 2026 seasons.
Before we get to the semifinals, before we get to the Fiesta Bowl and the Peach Bowl coming up this week, just a couple of big picture college football questions for you, Brett. I've heard a lot of people, and lately the Dan Lanning comments are getting the most headlines and I totally understand where, like, the transfer portal is open right now. We have teams that are still playing with coordinators who have taken other jobs. And so it's kind of like, can you trust your coordinators to call plays and do the work they need to do as you approach one of the biggest games in the history of your program? Or, when you get out of your coaches meeting, are they doing what they have to do to try to make sure they're set up for success in their new job, which I totally would understand because these guys are about to be head coaches. How do we solve this? Dan said the season needs to end on January 1st. Is this a calendar issue? Is it a structural issue, Brett? What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think you just need to shift it around a little bit in terms of the coaches, because when they move around, that's where everything else, dominoes fall from there. Maybe that all falls back to the transfer portal and high school recruiting signing days, because that's why there's been such an increased pressure to move quickly with the coaches. You want to get your new guy in there to be able to then go recruit, go sign transfers, go sign recruits before those deadlines. And you remember the first signing day, which really has now become the signing day, is in December. And then now this transfer portal is early January. So the two biggest periods of talent acquisition for your roster are happening, December, January. So that's why it's such a race to get to fill your coaching spots. And yeah, there's several problems with the schedule, quite honestly. I think the first move they made was correct, limiting the transfer portal's access. Remember last year and years before, it was like a crazy carousel again in the spring and summer when kids would leave. At least now this 2-week span in January is the transfer portal season. That's one solution they fixed, but you're right. They got to figure out the timing where it lines up with coach changes. Because it's crazy. You're looking at this Final Four. You got Ole Miss, their staff, half of them are going to LSU next year, and they're doing 2 times the work doing LSU recruiting, Ole Miss game prep. That's crazy with Charlie Weiss and them. And then you look over at Oregon, both the coordinators are now taking jobs elsewhere. So yeah, it's a crazy sport. You don't see it in any other sport. Like it'd be silly at the NFL all of a sudden if these coordinators and head coaches were moving around right before Wild Card Weekend, right? So they got to get it fixed.
Give me and if you want to, a couple of names, feel free to do that. But your favorite transfer portal additions so far, programs you think clearly have gotten better as a result of players transferring. Are there a couple of names, Brett, that stand out to you?
Well, I'll be honest with you. With the transfer portal just opening up, I don't look at it yet. So
Okay.
What I do with Pick Six previews, I do the preview magazine. It comes out in July, and I'm doing all 68 Power 4 teams. So what I end up doing is I would drive myself crazy if I looked every minute, and they do a great job covering it, like on 3 and 24/7. They do an excellent job, but I wait until the whole thing is done, and then I dig in. So if you ask me that question in February or March, I'll have a clear answer, and I'll be able to rank them for you. Right now, it's just absolute chaos, and I'm just looking at the semifinal matchups before I dig into off-season research.
Totally makes sense. And I actually was going to ask you how, because we use your stuff around here every single year, and so you do an elite job at the previews. How has the change in the sport changed your approach to your job? Like, how has it affected you?
Oh, it's changed it tenfold. I mean, back in the day, you remember when I launched this back in 2012, it was a little bit more simple of a landscape. I mean, you would just look at the high school recruiting, and then you would look at who left early for the pros. You always have a handful of starters go to the pros early. That was it. If there ever was a transfer, it was like once a summer, and a lot of times maybe a backup or two, but like nothing like this. So with the advent of the transfer portal, it's just increased the research time tenfold, and it's an extra problem, but I find it to be an advantage because it's either you do it or you don't. I dive all the way in. So I mean, I'm doing every single position group, every single team, looking at where guys came from, why they left, why they came, everything. Talking to coordinators, talking to position coaches, head coaches. So it's really an exhaustive 365-day process, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, I love the process of it, getting to talk to so many people. By the time July rolls around, I'm really, really ready to get it on shelves and shipped out across the country. But then the fun part begins when the season kicks off. This year I call it Pick 6 Plus. It's a weekly stats and info package every Tuesday during the season. You get all my game picks and all my analysis week to week. So kind of a magazine every week, if you will. So been a great year, and the transfer portal has changed everything, but it's been an advantage for me.
Yeah, and keep up the great work. And before we set you loose, we'll send people over to the spot where they can get the magazine. But let's look back for a moment because, the quarters, Brett, featured 4 games that were surprising, I think, in very different ways. So I want to ask you, of the 4 games, Miami beating Ohio State, Indiana undressing Alabama, Ole Miss upsetting Georgia, and Oregon blanking Texas Tech, which was the most surprising result to you and why?
Well, I actually called the Ole Miss game outright. That was a nice hit for me there. The one I missed on was Texas Tech, Oregon. I thought that this Texas Tech team, I've been following them closely all season. The way they've destroyed almost every opponent, 12 wins by 20-plus points, 12-1 against the spread was a nation high. So I thought they were going to go and compete with Oregon, and one side of the ball did. I thought Texas Tech's defense played really well, held them just to 9 points if you think of it. I mean, 7 was off that 1-yard fumble, and then another 7 with 10 seconds left in garbage time. So Tech's defense came to play, but the offense looked totally shell-shocked. Darren Morton, I've never seen him look like that. Coaches were out-coached. So I was more shocked with that outcome of the 4.
Okay, let me ask you about Indiana, Alabama, because ultimately it feels like, and I don't know how much of this is just the logo, I don't know how much of this is just the brand. I don't know how much of this is people just simply not watching Indiana. But it felt like a lot of people were very, very surprised. Not that Indiana won, but that it was just an ass kicking. Were you surprised?
Yeah, I think I was surprised with the magnitude of that for sure. I mean, I thought they'd win by 7-10 points, but no, I don't think anybody saw a 35-point bomb. And that's Alabama's worst loss in 30 years, going back to 1998. So unbelievable. And really, what it was Indiana did to Alabama what Alabama has done to everybody for the last 20 years under Saban. So. And I mean, the comparisons don't stop there. When they were showing Cignetti in the fourth quarter up by 35, he was still laser focused. The attention to detail reminded me of Saban himself. So, I was fascinated to see that, and really the biggest day in Indiana football history. And each time it's going to get a little bigger here. So here they are in the Final Four, picking them to beat Oregon too. And then they have a shot at their first national title in school history. So heck of a coaching job, heck of a quarterback, heck of an offensive line. You watch these guys, it's like they have 13 guys on the field. They're so well coached and disciplined. So, hats off to Indiana. Heck of a season so far.
You referenced the Oregon Tech game, and of course, we were very interested around here being in Big 12 country, and both Utah and BYU kept out of the CFP as a result of losses to Texas Tech, and of course, Utah lost to BYU as well. Was that performance indicative at all, Brett, of the Big 12 as a whole, or is that just Oregon just, showing out that day?
Yeah, I don't think it's indicative of the Big 12's strength or weakness. I think Texas Tech did a heck of a job. They built up a juggernaut roster here in their first serious big transfer cycle. Got them to 11-1, 12-1 with the conference title, their first time ever. I thought it was a special season. Then you get into the national bracket. It's all about matchups, and I think they drew a good one with Oregon, good in terms of one of the strongest. I mean, with Oregon, you have 85 four-stars on the roster. So while Tech was able to throw in 10 to 15 four-stars this transfer cycle, you're still a couple of years behind with what this machine that Oregon's building. So. Yeah, I don't think it's a knock on the Big 12. I always say the Big 12 is stronger than the ACC. The fact the ACC has a Clemson or a Miami doesn't discredit doesn't mean it's stronger than the whole length of the Big 12. I'd take the Big 12 head-to-head over the ACC. So, BYU and Utah, very strong teams. I mean, you saw BYU go out, beat Georgia Tech, a team that was competing for the ACC late in the year. And then Utah roll it up on Nebraska. I think we all saw that one coming. But, yeah, I think the Big 12 was strong, and you want to see them continue to improve, though. Let's see how they do in the transfer portal as a conference. Let's see the recruiting. And then you want to take care of those non-conference games in September. There's going to be a couple chances every year. You want to go grab those games, too. So continuing to build for the Big 12.
So you reference you're going to pick Indiana to beat Oregon. Indiana is the Vegas favorite to win that game and win the title. Vegas is telling us whoever wins that game is going to win the title. So do you agree with that? And then on the other side, Miami, Ole Miss, who you got and why?
I'm going to go with Miami in this one, and it was tough to forecast. I'm really high on Ole Miss, too. Like I said, I picked Ole Miss outright to beat Georgia. That one came true. I just don't know how many more weeks they can keep this charade up with the, 6 staffers doing multiple jobs, working LSU jobs, Ole Miss job. I think they're playing with fire a little bit there. There were certain times in the game you saw that they were not ready for the 2-minute drill at the end of the first half, and they weren't ready for that fake punt that Georgia drew up. So there's parts of the game where I think they're a little bit understaffed. I do love Chambliss, but I'm going to go with Miami. I think it's the best D-line remaining. They're just vicious when you watch them play. They were all over Ohio State. What's coming in, I thought, was the best team in the country. So I think they beat them bigger than the score would even show. It was a very dominant Miami game. I'll go with the Canes, and then that would set up a Miami versus Indiana game. And I can't pick against Indiana so far. They're number one in my game grader formula all season. If you're looking at the season scope and the last 4 weeks, I like to look at the recent metric too. They're number one there. So really rounding into form, dominating everybody. I'll go with Indiana.
All right, buddy, before I set you loose, got a lot of college football fans tuned in today. Where can they go get your work?
Thanks so much. You can find me on Twitter, Pick6 Previews. It's all spelled out, Pick6 Previews. And then for the magazine, it's coming soon. The link will be up there, but it's pick6previews.com. You want to save that website. We have the 2026 magazine coming in July, and the Pick6 Plus edition coming for 2026 season.
Thank you, my friend. Have a great week. Appreciate the time, and be well, okay?
Oh, thanks so much. Anytime.
All right, Brett Ciancia, Pick Six Previews. At Pick Six Previews, as he referenced on social media. And yeah, we get a copy of his stuff every single late summer, early fall. And he's great. Does a really, really good job. A lot of good stuff on Utah, BYU, the Big 12, and the national college football landscape. The CFP resumes on Thursday evening. You can hear both semifinal games on this radio station. Miami and Ole Miss, Glendale, Arizona. It's the Fiesta Bowl. And then on Friday, it is the Peach Bowl between Oregon and Indiana. So a lot of college football coming your way. Some breaking news. John Harbaugh has been fired by the Baltimore Ravens, and according to Adam Schefter, is expected to emerge as the favorite for the head coaching job of the New York Giants. Coaching carousel in college and pro football, it's always wild. All right, here's the deal. Historic day here in Salt Lake City. About a mile and a half away from where we're broadcasting, Morgan Scalley was introduced as the 24th head coach in Utah football history. I had a premonition that it was going to go well. I don't think I figured it was going to go as well as it did. I thought Morgan did a great job. Everybody involved killed it. So if you missed it from earlier, we're going to replay that for you coming up on the other side of a quick break. And then at 6 o'clock, when we officially say goodnight, we're going to make way for the Alex Jensen Coaches Show. So a lot of Utah athletics content coming up over the next 2 hours. No reason to go anywhere. Keep it right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. All right, wrapping it up. Final segment of the show. Historic day today. It's been a little bit of a different show. We had to stay pretty fluid because of the press conference announcing Morgan Scalley as the 24th head coach in Utah football history. So that was the bulk of the show today. We did a little NBA with Tim McMahon as the trade deadline is just a month away. And we have a Real Salt Lake acquisition to announce. I don't know anything about any of this. RSL has acquired a 17-year-old forward named Chance Cowell from San Jose for GAM. GAM, Porter, you're a GAM expert. RSL sends GAM to San Jose for a 17-year-old forward.
Again, you're going to open up some of the cap that takes away some of the money that goes against the cap. So a little roster flexibility and a young talent, maybe.
Maybe. I don't know. Think about it. All I know is that this team reports in 3 days, and they've done nothing. So I guess they've done this.
General allocation money.
Shout out to the GAM. We're big fans of the GAM on the show. So an RSL acquisition. Hey, I didn't ask you. Give me some notable former Utes folks up at the press conference. I mean,
it was all of the above.
Everybody.
I saw Trevor Riley. I saw Robert Johnson, Stevenson Sylvester. As you mentioned, all of our booster friends, the men with the gold. They were all up there.
And they make the rules.
In attendance. You heard all the questions from OC and all of the media members from the market. And then the entire Layton Field Club was full of people, both from the University of Utah and what I assume are fans with checkbooks, but also just a bunch of people around the program.
How many people approach you and said, hey, you and Spence do an awesome job in the afternoons?
At least one.
Oh, we got one.
We did get one.
Who was it? Anyone we know? Trevor? Was it Trevor?
It was Trevor.
That's what I figured. Was Trevor in sunglasses indoors?
He was.
Okay. Is he currently traveling to Eastern Europe to try to mine for oil or something?
Well, it was funny. I didn't necessarily expect him to be there because I talked to him yesterday and he was like out in Idaho somewhere. He was in California the day before that. He was in Hawaii a week before that. So I wasn't totally expecting Trevor to be there, but alas, our guy may be able to be in more than one place at a time. I think is the thing I've landed on.
Is there a chance that he is going to join the radio program at some point soon?
I believe Friday.
Friday. Live in studio or via phone?
Dude,
I know.
Who knows?
I know. It's only Tuesday, so who knows where he's going to be on Friday. So historic day. I thought Morgan just did such a great job. And, one of the things, Porter, that really stood out, he did a really, really good job of, acknowledging that when change happens, people get nervous. And with a standard that's been set by Witt for 2+ decades, he understands, and I'm paraphrasing. If you want to listen, go to our website, ESPN700sports.com. But acknowledging, as a result of this change, there is this portion of Ute fans that might be a little bit nervous about what the future of Utah football looks like. But I love the way he handled it because he talked about, well, if you're confident, you view this as an opportunity to just be better than it already has been. And look, I've said this about Alex Jensen, and it's different because the basketball program has been in kind of a precocious spot for a number of different years, and I feel like the football program is going to continue to stay where it's been. But I'm not going to be the dude that says this should be better than Witt because that is a really, really hard thing to say. But I just love the way he handled that. I think if you had any trepidation about this transition, today should have at least alleviated some of those fears.
I absolutely think so. And you mentioned it, right? He said that this can be something that is for the timid, scary, right? But for people who are confident and bold, it's just an opportunity. And, he intimated that he believes that Utah can win a national championship here in Salt Lake. And looking into his eyes, I believe that he believes that. Now, I'm going to wait until he proves it. But, if you operate on belief, which a lot of fans do, today was a really invigorating day for you on the Hill.
Yeah, and I'll say the same thing about Morgan, as I've said, as we react to all these coaching hires. In this day and age of instant reaction, media, 24/7 inundation of information, everybody wants to know, well, is this a good hire? Is it a bad hire? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody has any idea as to whether or not this is going to be a thing that works long term. Only time will tell. I do think, though, if you were skeptical and you wanted to actually hear from the horse's mouth and you had a chance to listen to Morgan, and it was all the Morgan things, right? Like there was some football stuff, talked about, his offensive identity. He talked about, Colton Swan and how he's been, kind of ready for this opportunity for a few years. He talked about the players and ultimately was very front-facing about this is a program that is about the players, and it doesn't matter how good of a coach you are. If you don't have the horses, you're not going to be able to compete. And it was a wit thing that Morgan's going to continue. He said the players eat first, the players fly first class, because without them, we don't have jobs, not vice versa. You can find good coaches anywhere, but it's hard to find good players. Last thing, Porter, it does back up the assertion. Like with how quickly Morgan moved to fill out his staff, I think when he said at the Vegas Bowl, if you don't think we have a plan, then you don't know who we are. I think a lot of people are like, oh, okay, well, let's see what the plan is. And with how quickly he moved to fill the staff, he has had this plan in mind for quite some time.
Well, and not only has, a guy that he sees around corners, as leaders do, have a plan, but it also kind of intimates that these things at this level, they don't happen as quickly and as out of nowhere as it may have seemed to folks the day after Christmas.
Yeah.
Let's just be clear. Everyone in the rooms up there knew what was going on long before it happened. In fact, Colton Swan was calling defensive plays throughout parts of this year for a reason, right? That's part of the game. Now, was part of the plan maybe thrown into flux? Did Morgan Scalley have to audible a little bit when Kyle goes to Michigan, of all places? Yes. But of all people, Morgan Scalley knows how to audible.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. No doubt about that. All right. We will say goodnight. Coming up, more Utah athletics content. The men's basketball team is back in action coming up tomorrow, I believe, against the Kansas Jayhawks. The first game for Utah in the Big 12 was a baptism by fire, as they say, as the University of Arizona is the #1 team in college basketball. Colorado, the women play Kansas. Utah's at Colorado tomorrow for a 7 o'clock tip, and then it's BYU at home on Saturday for an 8 o'clock tip. So the women are going to take on Kansas tomorrow. But game one, Arizona smoked them 97-78. So we're going to let you hear the Alex Jensen Coaches Show coming up after a quick break. Porter, what comes our way on a busy Wednesday edition of the show?
On a Wednesday edition of The Drive, Chris Kamrani stops by for his weekly hit. We'll chat with Craig Bowlerjack, of course, on some football and of course, the Jazz as well. Sam Bruckhouse joins the program to talk CFP, NFL, and then hoping for the voice of the Utes ahead of Utah and Colorado.
There we go. So we'll see if Rouse can stop by today, but we will say goodnight. A historic Tuesday afternoon, a historic Tuesday day as Morgan Scalley officially introduced as the 24th head coach in Utah football history. Special thank you today to Stevenson Sylvester, Terrell Burgess, Tim McMahon, and Brett Ciancia. If you missed any of the sound from the show today, go to the website. It is ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. That ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store or the Google Play Store. Then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your show. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars. I will be on TV tonight at 10:35 with Dave Fox on KMYU. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Tuesday evening. We'll talk to you on a Wednesday Drive. As always, you can catch it right here on ESPN 700.